Hi there. Tonight, we're focusing on a single visitor, a traveler whose intentions might be older than human civilization itself. This is the story of 3I Atlas, an interstellar voyager approaching Mars with a purpose both quiet and monumental. You might think you understand what Atlas is, maybe just a comet, a celestial wanderer. But tonight, let your mind drift past assumptions, past familiar ideas, because Atlas is not here by chance, and Mars is not the same planet it was yesterday or will be tomorrow. Picture this. The red landscape stretches before you, cold, dusty, and silent, yet filled with potential energy. The air is thin, barely moving, the sun pale and distant. Imagine standing at the Martian pole, ice caps shimmering faintly, as a slow, deliberate visitor inches closer across the void of space. Everything seems still, almost lifeless, and yet something ancient and intelligent is unfolding, orchestrating change on a planetary scale. The sky above you might look familiar, but Atlas moves against expectation, nudging chemical balances, activating forces that haven't stirred for millions of years. Funny, isn't it? Here we are, you and I, maybe in your bed, lights low, the hum of civilization around you, while something incomprehensibly large and patient nudges the future of our neighboring world. Maybe you're sipping a warm drink or wrapped in blankets. Maybe you've glanced at Mars through a telescope and wondered at its stillness. Tonight, that stillness is deceptive, hiding a transformation as precise as clockwork, as deliberate as a cosmic sculptor's hand. So, settle in, dim the lights, let the gentle hum of your room mingle with the imagined silence of Mars. Picture the planet, its rusty plains, its whispering winds, and ask yourself, what if an object, older than human memory, has been traveling for thousands of years, just to arrive at this exact moment? What is it doing? Why now? And most importantly, what will we see when the change becomes undeniable? And so, before we witness the full unfolding of Atlas's mission, we must first step back to the beginning, when this object began its journey across the stars, long before we could even imagine the skies beyond our blue world. That journey, subtle, unstoppable, and extraordinary, is where our story begins. Imagine a solitary traveler drifting through interstellar space, older than human civilization, gliding past stars that have long burned out. This is 3I Atlas, a vessel of chemistry and intention, moving not randomly, but with a purpose so deliberate, it would take millennia to complete. Let's talk about a traveler that doesn't knock on doors or leave luggage in the airport carousel. Imagine a solitary traveler drifting through interstellar space, older than human civilization, gliding past stars that have long burned out. This is 3I Atlas, a vessel of chemistry and intention, moving not randomly, but with a purpose so deliberate, it would take millennia to complete. You feel the weight of its silence pressing against the void, like velvet sheets wrapping a planet you've never visited, and yet it moves with a patience that makes your most boring Zoom meetings feel like rocket launches. The darkness is soft here, a cushion of nothingness that smells faintly of ozone and cosmic dust if you could smell space. That is, and the occasional glimmer of a distant star twinkles like a cosmic Morse code, perhaps spelling out secrets about breakfast in Atlantis. You drift alongside it in your imagination, fingers brushing invisible currents, toes tickled by particles smaller than thoughts. The scale is absurd. If Atlas were a delivery truck, it would carry the weight of mountains and the subtle arrogance of a cat who knows your password. Each second stretches and contracts in rhythms older than the pyramids, and yet you're compelled to notice the tiniest flicker of its icy tail, gliding silently across a vacuum so vast it could swallow 1 million Spotify playlists. You might wonder if anyone is watching, if the planets are gossiping about your curiosity, but in truth, you are alone with Atlas, riding shotgun in the cosmic driveway, your heartbeat synced with the hum of photons, boots on sand, light on land, shadows stretch like a painter's hand. Its hull reflects starlight like a disco ball at a meditation retreat, spinning slowly with purpose. The frozen surface glitters faintly, reminding you of powdered sugar on a donut you never ate, and you realize even the emptiness has texture, a hiss like boiling tea over a distant unlit kettle, a whisper you can almost hear between stars. Every centimeter of its trajectory has been plotted with the precision of a barista, making a single latte art heart on a billion-cup scale. And yet, you notice it's absurdly poetic, like a librarian sneezing quietly in a cathedral, both significant and entirely unnecessary. The vacuum around Atlas vibrates with quietude, a soundless vibration that tickles your imagination and makes you wonder if space is secretly humming lullabies in a language of neutrinos. Moonlight melts, silver felt, night cards dealt. You imagine touching the frozen surface, expecting frostbite but feeling velvet instead, a paradox of physics and imagination. Light from stars centuries dead spills over its edges like glitter from a spilled craft kit, painting your mind with textures you can neither smell nor hold. You picture tiny outgassing puffs, gentle clouds escaping like sighs from a tired office worker, carrying chemical messages across the void, subtle enough to make even the most hyperactive Twitter feed feel calm. The magnitude is incomprehensible. Atlas moves like the slow clap of the universe, deliberate, elegant, a cosmic conductor orchestrating a symphony you can almost see in colors you've never named. Comet tails sway, starlight plays, dark sky stays, night delays. You might think it's lonely, but loneliness in space is absurdly relative. Atlas is surrounded by the ghosts of stars, the debris of planets, and the quiet advice of black holes that don't actually speak. It glides past asteroid belts like a dog walking past puddles, cautious but purposeful, avoiding collisions as if it has somewhere very, very important to be. Each dust particle it nudges into orbit creates ripples that travel centuries before humans can even measure them, and you realize that your concept of fast is meaningless here. Nebulas sigh, galaxies drift, cosmic lift, starlight shift. Your mind tries to keep up, catching fragments like butterfly nets in zero gravity. You imagine the scent of Martian rocks mixed with the shimmer of Venusian clouds. Absurd, impossible, yet comforting. Every trajectory correction, every subtle pivot, speaks of intelligence older than the first human footstep, patient enough to wait until civilizations emerge and vanish before noticing its own passage. It's deliberate, patient, almost conspiratorial, as if it's observing your imagination while simultaneously reshaping a planet you'll visit in your dreams. Ice on red, pale skies wed, silent tread, thoughts sped. 10,000 millennia pass, and Atlas barely flinches. You inhale deeply, imagining the smell of frozen CO2 and starlight mingling, a scent so alien it feels like cinnamon rolls and ozone on a Thursday morning. And in the quiet, you realize something astonishing. You are part of this slow, deliberate journey, a witness to a silent voyage that is both absurdly huge and intimately poetic. Stars bend light, time takes flight, cosmic kite, endless night. By now, your mind has begun to drift with Atlas, tracing curves that no human hand could measure, imagining textures that make carpets feel abrasive and clouds feel heavy. Its purpose is deliberate, a centuries-long whisper that will one day reach Mars, and you are perched on the edge of comprehension, your thoughts tickled by absurdity, mesmerized by precision, lulled by the gentle, eternal motion of a silent voyager. Picture Atlas leaving a stellar nursery billions of years ago, crossing vast voids where no life exists, where silence reigns. Every year, every century, every eon of its drift is a quiet prelude to an event no human eye has yet witnessed, a slow-motion story of precision and patience. Let's drift alongside time itself, where seconds stretch like taffy and centuries feel like minutes. Picture Atlas leaving a stellar nursery billions of years ago, crossing vast voids where no life exists, where silence reigns. Every year, every century, every eon of its drift is a quiet prelude to an event no human eye has yet witnessed, a slow-motion story of precision and patience. You can almost hear the universe holding its breath, the vacuum so still it seems to cradle Atlas as though it were a sleeping infant. You feel the cold pressing gently against your imagined skin, like lying under a sheet of ice, smooth and unyielding, yet strangely comforting. You imagine the stars as ancient sentinels, blinking occasionally in Morse-like flashes, observing Atlas with impassive curiosity. Their light has traveled millions of years to reach your eyes, or at least your imagination, tracing paths you could never hope to walk. The vacuum stretches around Atlas like an endless black ocean, waves of nothingness lapping silently against its hull. You notice the faint shimmer of cosmic dust, glittering like sugar on a forgotten cake, and the occasional distant nova wink, reminding you that life's drama plays out even in spaces utterly devoid of observers. Time here is a thick syrup. 1 minute feels like centuries, yet centuries feel like a breath. Your thoughts wander like satellites, tracing patterns that Atlas itself might have anticipated billions of years ago. You imagine the vessel nudging past the remnants of failed star systems, weaving carefully around dead planets, each move deliberate, intentional, absurdly polite. It drifts through dark patches of interstellar fog, where particles float lazily like pollen in an invisible breeze, and you realize that this emptiness is alive with quiet possibility. You smell faint ozone and the phantom tang of hydrogen clouds, textures your mind fabricates to make sense of the intangible. Atlas has moved longer than any memory, carrying within it the quiet patience of someone who has watched galaxies unfold while humans blinked into existence. You feel the immense scale pressing against your imagination, each second folding into the next. Atlas crosses the yawning chasms between stars, as though hopping across puddles in a backyard, absurdly gentle, impossibly precise. It seems to glide past radiation belts and cosmic winds with the elegance of a ballerina, avoiding a spilled coffee cup. There is no hurry, no impatience, no urgency, only the slow, deliberate ticking of a cosmic clock that has no need for minutes or hours. Each adjustment, each microscopic turn, is an act of care, a whisper across the void that hints at the intelligence embedded in its design. Imagine the faint warmth of photons brushing its surface, years-old light finally making contact, as if a letter mailed centuries ago has just arrived. You can almost hear the hiss of solar wind slipping past, soft and constant, like rain against a rooftop you've never visited. Every particle that touches Atlas is a story. Every grain of dust, a note in a symphony older than Earth itself. You think of it drifting past nebulae, colorful clouds of gas and dust that have already birthed millions of stars, and Atlas threads carefully, avoiding collision with a patience that would make the slowest bureaucrat look frantic. You might feel absurdly human in this moment, wrapped in blankets on a couch while Atlas travels through darkness more profound than any night on Earth. The contrast between your immediate reality and the vast patience of the voyager is dizzying. Time here bends, centuries fold, eons curl, and yet Atlas moves with a purpose so steady that even the chaos of entire galaxies feels irrelevant. You sense a rhythm, subtle and enduring, a heartbeat echoing through the void, matching your own, slowing your thoughts to match the pace of interstellar drift. Imagine comet tails streaming past like ribbons in a cosmic parade, Atlas weaving gracefully as if performing a ritual no one has observed before. You might smile at the absurdity. A billion-year voyage conducted with the finesse of a barista, decorating a latte you'll never taste, a gardener pruning flowers that will never bloom on Earth. Yet there is seriousness hidden within this poetry. Each eon of travel prepares the vessel for a rendezvous with a planet that will soon awaken, a world long silent, awaiting the gentle touch of chemistry and intention. You feel a quiet kinship with Atlas, not in scale, not in power, but in patience. You recognize the absurd beauty of enduring time, of carrying purpose through emptiness, of moving carefully while everything else drifts unpredictably. The vacuum hums softly, a lullaby of absence, inviting your mind to sink deeper into this slow, deliberate narrative. You sense the completion of something approaching, yet remain suspended in anticipation, cocooned in both comfort and awe. And so, you watch Atlas continue its billion-year ballet, aware that even as you exhale, centuries of interstellar motion unfold around it. Each twist, each drift, each pulse of faint gas and light is a testament to patience, a slow-motion whisper that reminds you that time can be gentle, absurd, and unimaginably vast. You drift with it, carried along in quiet meditation, feeling the improbable intimacy of a mind stretched across eons, a silent voyager moving with intent, precision, and astonishing patience. Imagine standing on Earth as Atlas enters our solar system, its trajectory seeming almost impossible. Defying the rules that govern other celestial bodies, it curves, nudges, and adjusts as if guided by a hand that spans both time and space. Let's walk for a moment along the invisible streets of our solar neighborhood, where distances are measured not in miles or kilometers, but in light years and whispers of starlight. Imagine standing on Earth as Atlas enters our solar system, its trajectory seeming almost impossible. Defying the rules that govern other celestial bodies, it curves, nudges, and adjusts as if guided by a hand that spans both time and space. You can feel the weight of its motion pressing gently into the universe, like the subtle push of a parent nudging a sleeping child without disturbing their dreams. Even from here, you sense precision woven into each shift of its path, the invisible hand of planning tracing curves that would make any mathematician weep with admiration and mild envy. You imagine the sunlight striking Atlas at angles you cannot fully perceive, painting its icy surface in pale gold and soft silver, like candlelight flickering across a marble floor. Each glint, each shimmer, is a whisper across the void, signaling the careful choreography of an object older than human thought. You feel the solar wind brushing past, like invisible silk scarves rippling in a cosmic breeze, and the faint radiation humming quietly, imperceptible, but always there, a constant companion on this vast and silent journey. The orbit of Venus curves gently nearby, Jupiter stands like a cosmic sentinel, and Mars awaits its visitor with quiet patience. Atlas threads the space between them with elegance, moving as if avoiding puddles on a rain-soaked sidewalk. Yet each decision is calculated, deliberate, and precise. You might chuckle at the absurdity, a cosmic driver in a space-age chariot, weaving through planets with the careful timing of someone balancing a stack of coffee cups while tiptoeing across a tightrope. Yet, Beneath the humor lies awe, a recognition that Atlas's path is no accident, no random tumble across the void. Comet tails curl, starlight bends, space-time hums, motion sends. You sense subtle forces acting in ways both familiar and alien. Gravity from planets and asteroids teases at its course, nudges it gently, and yet Atlas corrects, adjusting as if aware of every particle along the way. You imagine it gliding past the asteroid belt, stones tumbling in their eternal slow-motion dance, while Atlas curves around them like a dancer avoiding a cascade of falling leaves, each motion graceful and entirely intentional. Cosmic dust drifts lazily, nebulae glow faintly, a celestial backdrop for this quiet drama. You feel a connection between your heartbeat and the pulse of space itself, the slow thrum of a universe that has been moving long before you arrived and will continue long after your attention fades. Atlas is both ancient and present, a traveler whose every adjustment reminds you that time is relative, patience is infinite, and the universe can be both absurdly meticulous and ridiculously vast. Orbiting planets blink in cosmic rhythm, shadows stretch across moons, light spills over rings, silvery and slow. You might imagine eavesdropping on these silent orbits, listening to the faint whispers of gravitational conversations between bodies. Atlas does not participate idly. It engages, slipping subtly through these talks, sometimes nudging, sometimes listening, always moving with purpose. The void is neither empty nor chaotic. It is a space of relationships, interactions, and careful negotiation. Each meter traveled a careful choice, each trajectory a silent message to the planets it passes. You notice the faint glimmer of ice along Atlas's surface, catching starlight like sugar crystals in a moonlit bakery. Small jets of vapor puff from its surface, subtle as sighs, tiny adjustments in pressure or composition that hint at activity invisible to human eyes, yet critical for the journey ahead. You imagine the absurdity of it, a traveler older than Earth itself, adjusting its path with tiny exhalations of gas, like someone steering a raft by blowing on puddles across an infinite pond. The poetry of this motion is overwhelming, as if the universe has a sense of humor that only becomes visible when you pay attention to these imperceptible gestures. Comet tails shimmer, starlight flows, planetary bows, gravity slows. Your mind wanders across the distances between planets, imagining the silent ballet of light and matter, energy and time. Atlas moves, and the solar system responds ever so slightly. A planet's faint tilt, a moon's imperceptible wobble, a dust particle redirected by a gravitational whisper. The neighborhood is alive, quiet, but dynamic, a network of interactions invisible to casual observers. Yet Atlas navigates it flawlessly, with the confidence of a traveler who has rehearsed this journey for eons. You realize that you are part of this observation, perched in your imagination like an interstellar witness. Each curve of Atlas's path, each subtle correction, is a testament to intelligence, patience, and the absurd elegance of the cosmos. You feel the quiet thrill of comprehension, mixed with the gentle absurdity of imagining a spacefaring entity steering with invisible hands across distances that dwarf human lifetimes. And so, you linger here in the solar neighborhood, feeling the subtle pull of planets, the delicate adjustments of a silent voyager, and the hum of the universe stretching time like taffy around Atlas. The path it traces is deliberate, patient, and astonishingly elegant. You exhale slowly, carried along, knowing that this trajectory will one day touch Mars, and that your imagination has already arrived, sharing in a journey that began billions of years ago, yet unfolds quietly in the present moment. Picture these planets in silent council, their orbits precise, yet accommodating a visitor whose journey has been orchestrated with mathematical care. Each alignment is not coincidence. It is a deliberate pause, a waypoint in a mission older than human history. Let's pause for a moment to consider the grand stage on which Atlas performs its quiet ballet. Picture these planets in silent council, their orbits precise, yet accommodating a visitor whose journey has been orchestrated with mathematical care. Each alignment is not coincidence. It is a deliberate pause, a waypoint in a mission older than human history. You feel the cosmic geometry pressing gently against your imagination, like a perfectly stacked set of books on a shelf that stretches to infinity. Venus glows softly, a pale jade orb reflecting sunlight like a polished gem, while Jupiter looms majestically, its cloud bands rippling like painted silk in the void. Mars waits patiently, red and serene, a quiet stage for the culmination of a journey that began long before humans could even count the days in their calendars. You notice the silent harmony of the orbits, a rhythm older than any drumbeat on Earth. Their movements are like dancers rehearsing without music, the invisible conductor of gravity guiding each step, each rotation. Atlas slips gracefully between them, navigating this planetary choreography with precision and intention. The scale is dizzying, absurd almost, as if a chessboard had been spread across light years, and Atlas were moving a single piece with infinite foresight. You can almost smell the faint ozone wafting from Venus's upper clouds, feel the warmth radiating from Jupiter's turbulent storms, and sense the dry, mineral tang of Martian dust carried through imagination alone. Orbital hums, silent strums, cosmic drums, starlight strums. Each planet's pull tugs subtly at Atlas, and yet it adjusts, nudging its course just enough to maintain the delicate balance required for the next phase. Imagine Atlas like a tightrope walker, crossing a wire strung between worlds, every step deliberate, every movement precise, yet all occurring in silence so profound that even your thoughts seem amplified. The alignment of Venus, Jupiter, and Mars is not just geometry. It is a marker, a signal to any intelligence paying attention, a celestial checkpoint in a plan that unfolds across millennia. You might imagine these planets gossiping quietly, their magnetic fields whispering secrets as they wait for Atlas to pass. The absurdity of this notion tickles your mind, yet there is comfort in imagining the cosmos as a space of polite coordination rather than random chaos. Atlas responds to every gravitational nudge with micro-corrections, its surface glinting faintly in starlight like sequins on a gala gown. You feel the patience of billions of years embedded in each movement, the weight of cosmic planning pressing gently against your imagination, reminding you that not all motion is hurried, not all purpose visible, and not all alignment accidental. Radiation belts shimmer, magnetospheres bend, charged particles hum, distant suns wend. You notice the delicate interplay of forces, tidal pulls, orbital resonances, micro-adjustments invisible to the human eye, but crucial to the vessel's path. The planets form a silent jury, judging its trajectory with impartiality, and you are an observer invited to this private council. Each moment feels like a breath held, a page turned in a cosmic storybook, where time slows and imagination stretches to fill the gaps between stars. Atlas glides, calm and deliberate, and you feel the universe holding its breath along with it, a pause that is both comforting and absurdly precise. You might picture Jupiter's great red spot swirling lazily, a storm older than many civilizations, while Venus radiates soft clouds of sulfur and light, and Mars waits in quiet anticipation. Atlas moves through these planetary halls like a diplomat, respectful, deliberate, never reckless, each micro-adjustment a bow, a nod, a gentle reminder that the cosmos has rules, and Atlas knows them well. You feel your own pulse syncing with the rhythm of these worlds, your imagination stretching across the void, brushing against the slow, deliberate motion of celestial bodies. Gravity bends subtly, time dilates, light refracts, shadows wait. The orchestration is meticulous. Each orbital node, each phase angle, each minor alignment is a waypoint Atlas cannot ignore. You feel the absurd beauty of its timing, the uncanny precision of a journey that has unfolded for millions of years and will continue long after your imagination drifts away. Atlas's path is a testament to patience and purpose, a slow unfolding of intention across a landscape measured in planetary distances and eons of time. You might sense the faint shimmer of particles trailing Atlas as it passes between planets, like dust stirred from a centuries-old bookshelf, catching starlight and carrying secrets along invisible currents. Each correction, each shift, is almost imperceptible, yet critical for the eventual rendezvous with Mars. The planets stand as silent witnesses, guardians of the path, providing subtle assistance through gravitational nudges, and you feel the absurd poetry of a universe in which even collisions are avoided with elegance and care. Orbit hums low, solar winds sway, planetary bows, night delays. You linger in this alignment, feeling the weight and grace of these silent giants, the delicate choreography of Atlas, and the comforting absurdity that such precision exists in a cosmos otherwise thought chaotic. Time stretches, distances fold, and you imagine watching centuries pass as Atlas negotiates the solar neighborhood. Every micromotion, a brushstroke on the canvas of planets, every pause, a note in a symphony older than life itself. And so, you rest here for a moment, suspended in imagination, watching Venus, Jupiter, and Mars form a cosmic alignment that is deliberate, patient, and astonishingly beautiful. Atlas slips through with quiet intent, threading the needle between worlds, and you feel the harmony, the absurdity, and the wonder of a solar system in perfect balance, carrying a traveler whose mission has been unfolding since long before human consciousness existed. Even where temperatures should prevent change, Atlas exhales faint plumes of gas, like a whisper in the darkness. These subtle emissions hint at activation, a preparation for transformation, invisible to casual observation, yet powerful beyond imagination. Let's drift gently into the quiet, frozen reaches of space, where temperatures plummet and matter seems suspended in eternal stillness. Even where temperatures should prevent change, Atlas exhales faint plumes of gas, like a whisper in the darkness. These subtle emissions hint at activation, a preparation for transformation, invisible to casual observation, yet powerful beyond imagination. You feel the absurd intimacy, a traveler older than human civilization, stirring molecules across the void with patience that dwarfs comprehension. The frozen surface glimmers faintly under distant starlight, while invisible currents carry the tiniest exhalations across the dark, empty expanse. You notice the textures in your mind, ice crystals layered like delicate glass, plumes curling like smoke from a candle, each molecule dancing with quiet precision. The cold should prevent motion, yet Atlas defies expectation, nudging chemistry into subtle interactions that will, in time, trigger more substantial transformations. You imagine holding a fragment of frozen gas, feeling its crisp chill, yet sensing the potential energy embedded within, waiting to be released. The absurd intimacy is soothing, the universe allowing you to witness processes that are imperceptible to all but the most attentive minds, yet profound in consequence. Plumes drift soft, frost shivers faint, particles swirl, light bends. You picture Atlas releasing microscopic jets of CO2 and water vapor, The movements are delicate, measured, almost like a painter applying the first strokes on a blank canvas. The emissions are invisible to human eyes, yet each particle carries the seed of change, nudging chemical reactions into motion, setting the stage for transformations that will unfold slowly across time. You feel the gentle rhythm of these micro-events, a cadence both imperceptible and deliberate, a silent song of preparation echoing through the void. You might imagine the absurdity, a lone traveler shaping a planet's future with breath so faint it could be mistaken for cosmic background noise. Each exhalation is deliberate, calculated, and precise, releasing just enough energy to stir molecules without destabilizing the fragile cold. You sense the intimacy. Watching Atlas exhale is like glimpsing a heartbeat in a vast, frozen cathedral. The void is silent, yet brimming with potential, waiting for activation to cascade across surfaces, chemical layers, and dormant materials. Ice shimmers soft, gases rise faint, currents drift, shadows curl. You notice the subtle influence these plumes have on nearby materials. Tiny jets collide with frost, causing microscopic shifts, redistributing molecules across icy surfaces. The process is slow, patient, almost meditative. You feel your imagination stretching, observing the invisible ballet of chemical interactions, each one a deliberate note in a symphony orchestrated over eons. The absurd intimacy comforts, change so gentle it goes unnoticed, yet powerful enough to set a dormant world on a path toward awakening. Currents twist faint, light glints soft, frost sighs, particles drift. You might picture Atlas pausing between exhalations, monitoring, adjusting, and calculating imperceptible shifts. The emissions are subtle hints of readiness, early steps in preparation for more dramatic transformations to come. You sense the poetry, even in the cold void, where everything should be still. Life, or potential for change, can be coaxed into motion. The universe feels intimate, precise, and absurdly patient. A vast laboratory for processes, invisible, yet profoundly consequential. Plumes curl soft, frost glints, gases shift, shadows linger. You imagine the chemical interactions as a slow dance, CO2, and water molecules nudged into reactions, frozen surfaces responding, tiny microcurrents weaving invisible patterns across the ice. The faint hissing of Atlas's exhalations, imagined yet palpable, sets a rhythm for the next stages of planetary activation. You feel the absurd intimacy, the universe conducting experiments on scales beyond comprehension, and you, comfortably suspended in imagination, observing the earliest whispers of transformation. Ice shifts slow, particles rise faint, light refracts, currents hum. You notice the subtle beauty in this slow motion process. The emissions are deliberate, yet gentle, an exercise in patience, precision, and potential. Atlas's preparation is invisible, yet powerful, like a whisper in a cathedral, shaping the environment without drawing attention. You sense the elegance of slow change, the poetry of micro-events building toward planetary activation, and the absurd intimacy of being aware of it from your distant vantage point. And so, you linger with Atlas in the cold void, observing the exhalations, the microcurrents, and the faint, deliberate pulses of chemical activation. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, wonder, and the absurdly comforting intimacy of witnessing potential being coaxed into motion. The universe is quiet, patient, and infinite in patience, and you float suspended in awe, imagination, and the slow unfolding of transformation in the frozen expanse. Imagine examining a mix of carbon dioxide and water ice, ratios that seem tailored for one specific goal. Here lies evidence not of chance chemistry, but of intentional design, the recipe for awakening a world long dormant. Let's settle gently into the intricate patterns hidden in molecular arrangements. Imagine examining a mix of carbon dioxide and water ice, ratios that seem tailored for one specific goal. Here lies evidence not of chance chemistry, but of intentional design, the recipe for awakening a world long dormant. You feel the subtle precision embedded in these frozen compounds, a quiet poetry of proportions, a deliberate architecture written in atoms. The absurd intimacy delights your imagination. You, hovering near Mars, tracing molecules that have been aligned across eons, watching preparation unfold in exquisite detail. You notice the textures in your mind, ice layered like translucent sheets of glass, CO2 interspersed like threads of crystal, each grain positioned with care. Tiny temperature differentials create gradients that guide reactions slowly, invisibly, setting the stage for transformation. You might imagine touching a shard of ice, feeling a chill so precise it hints at stored potential energy, molecules ready to react when conditions align. The universe feels absurdly intimate, the cold void cradling chemistry designed not for observation, but for subtle orchestration of planetary awakening. Molecules drift slow, frost glints faint, light bends, currents hum. You picture Atlas hovering silently, releasing microplumes and adjusting position to optimize chemical interactions. Each ratio, each alignment, each tiny concentration of gas or ice is intentional, a carefully designed note in a planetary symphony. You sense the patient rhythm, reactions unfolding over days, weeks, and months, invisible yet consequential. The absurd intimacy comforts, chemistry performed with precision beyond human conception, a recipe for change hidden in frozen silence. Subtle gradients shift, particles curl, frost sighs, light glints soft. You imagine examining these chemical signatures with instruments capable of incredible sensitivity. Spectrometers detect precise ratios, sensors note subtle shifts, and your mind reconstructs the invisible dance of molecules across ice and dust. Each combination carries intention, a quiet guidepost for activation. You feel the poetry. Chance has no role here. The universe has provided preparation, measured and deliberate, encoded in the very chemistry of Mars. Ice shimmers soft, CO2 drifts, particles rise, currents twist. You notice how ratios of carbon dioxide to water ice are just sufficient to trigger micro-reactions, forming the foundation for more complex processes. Tiny pockets of gas expand and contract, affecting surrounding layers, nudging the surface into readiness. You sense the elegance of the design. Atlas has prepared the environment with patience, subtlety, and absolute precision. The absurd intimacy delights. Every molecule, every layer of frost, participates in a silent conversation spanning billions of years. You might imagine observing the chemical patterns as if reading a story written in ice and gas. Each ratio is a sentence, each concentration a phrase, each subtle interaction a paragraph describing intention, purpose, and preparation. The universe hums gently around you, carrying hints of movement, change, and awakening. You feel the comfort of suspension, witnessing chemistry arranged with deliberation, knowing the larger story is unfolding, even if details remain imperceptible. Currents drift faint, frost bends slow, molecules shift soft, light glints. You sense the broader rhythm. Chemical preparation aligns with polar warming, microplumes of gas, and subtle shifts in temperature. The stage is set for activation, each element carefully positioned to interact when conditions are right. Atlas's guidance is invisible yet profound, orchestrating reactions with patient elegance. You feel the absurd intimacy, observing intentional design, encoded in molecular arrangements across a frozen planetary landscape. Plumes rise faint, ice glimmers soft, ratios precise, currents hum. You imagine the implications. These chemical signatures are a map, a guide for transformation, a demonstration that planetary-scale engineering is deliberate and precise. Humans observing these patterns may perceive only fragments, yet the orchestration is unmistakable. You feel suspended in awareness, floating alongside preparation, marveling at the scale, patience, and elegance of deliberate chemistry in the cold void. And so, you linger with the chemical signature of purpose, observing ratios, plumes, and ice formations aligned with intent. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, wonder, and the absurdly intimate poetry of deliberate planetary preparation. Mars waits, molecules poised, and you float suspended in imagination, tracing the quiet orchestration of matter that will awaken a world long dormant. Picture the thick disk of our galaxy, filled with ancient stars, a birthplace for Atlas. Traveling billions of years from this distant region, it carries not just matter, but purpose, a slow and patient pilgrimage across time and space. Let's drift gently outward, beyond the orbit of familiar planets, into the vast expanse of the Milky Way. Picture the thick disk of our galaxy, filled with ancient stars, a birthplace for Atlas. Traveling billions of years from this distant region, it carries not just matter, but purpose, a slow and patient pilgrimage across time and space. You feel the weight of immensity pressing softly against your imagination, like staring into a night sky stretching infinitely in all directions, where each glimmering star is both witness and guide. The absurd intimacy delights, a vessel of intention, moving silently through cosmic neighborhoods older than human understanding, threading its path with precision across epochs. You notice the textures of the galactic disk, dense clusters of stars, interstellar dust weaving clouds across light years, subtle gravitational currents nudging matter ever so slightly. Atlas threads its trajectory through this environment, each micro-adjustment calculated across billions of years, its motion a testament to patience and orchestration. You might imagine floating alongside, suspended in awe, tracing the path of a traveler older than civilizations, moving with intention across scales that both humble and astonish. Stars glimmer soft, dust drifts faint, light bends slow, currents hum. You picture the birthplace of Atlas, a region thick with stars, supernova remnants, and nebula clouds rich with carbon and oxygen. These elements coalesce, forming a vessel capable of traversing interstellar space while carrying precise chemical payloads. You sense the absurd intimacy, a journey beginning in the crucible of stellar evolution, stretching across billions of years, patiently approaching a distant planet. Every particle within Atlas is a messenger, each ratio of ice and gas, a carefully preserved signature of purpose. You notice the subtle gravitational interactions that guide Atlas across the galaxy. Stars tug gently, dust clouds provide resistance, and cosmic radiation nudges minuscule trajectories. These forces, imperceptible yet cumulative, have shaped Atlas's path, ensuring that billions of years later, it arrives at the solar system with precision. You feel the rhythm of patience, the slow accumulation of small motions producing perfect alignment, an elegance that unfolds beyond human comprehension, yet intimate enough for your imagination to trace. Currents drift slow, light refracts faint, particles shift, stars wink. You might imagine Atlas weaving through a cosmic tapestry, passing through regions of dense stellar clusters, avoiding hazards invisible to casual observation, responding to subtle gravitational cues. Its journey is both reactive and purposeful, guided by principles and physics embedded in the galactic neighborhood. You sense the absurd poetry, a vessel crafted in the heart of the galaxy, carrying both matter and purpose across the void, patiently orchestrated to arrive exactly where it must, billions of years later. Dust curls soft, starlight glints faint, currents hum, molecules drift. You notice the patience embedded in this pilgrimage. Time stretches differently in imagination. Billions of years become a rhythm, eons a gentle cadence. Atlas moves silently, exhaling faint plumes, adjusting microcurrents, maintaining course. Each chemical signature it carries is aligned to planetary and galactic scales. Every fraction of matter purposeful, every shift in trajectory deliberate. You feel the absurd intimacy, a slow-motion journey across the galaxy, comprehensible only in imagination, yet profoundly affecting distant planets and minds, millions of miles away. Stars shimmer faint, light bends slow, currents curl, dust drifts. You might picture the thick disk itself, rich in history, ancient stars burning long before Earth existed, nebulae cradling the building blocks of planets, cosmic material recycled through cycles of creation and destruction. Atlas emerges from this environment as both product and agent, carrying the chemical and structural tools necessary to transform Mars. You feel the poetry of interconnectedness, matter born in stellar furnaces now traveling with purpose, threading through cosmic neighborhoods with silent patience, invisible yet immensely powerful. Particles drift soft, light glints faint, currents hum, shadows bend. You sense the rhythm of the galactic voyage, slow, deliberate, patient, and precise. Atlas moves across light years with intention, its trajectory guided by both cosmic mechanics and purpose, encoded in its very structure. You exhale slowly, floating alongside, tracing invisible currents, chemical plumes, and gravitational whispers, marveling at the absurdly intimate orchestration of matter and intention across eons. And so, you linger, tracing the galactic origin, suspended between imagination and comprehension. Atlas journeys from a dense stellar disk, carrying both matter and purpose, threading a path through billions of years and light years, poised to intersect with Mars and humanity. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, awe, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing cosmic pilgrimage in slow, deliberate motion across the galaxy. Visualize the calendar of Mars and the solar system lining up with uncanny precision. On October 29th, 2025, a date that mirrors cycles recorded by civilizations long gone, Atlas reaches the point where its intervention will be most effective. Let's slow our gaze to the intricate dance of planets and time. Visualize the calendar of Mars and the solar system lining up with uncanny precision. On October 29th, 2025, a date that mirrors cycles recorded by civilizations long gone, Atlas reaches the point where its intervention will be most effective. You feel the tension of timing pressing softly against your imagination, like the perfect alignment of gears in a clock, too vast to see all at once. The absurd intimacy delights, a cosmic rhythm synchronized over eons, now intersecting with human awareness and planetary readiness in a single, imperceptible pivot. You notice the subtle precision in planetary positions. Mars, Earth, and neighboring planets trace paths calculated over centuries, their orbits converging in a way that amplifies Atlas's influence. Even tiny gravitational nudges from Jupiter or Venus contribute to the alignment, subtle yet essential, like whispers guiding the steps of a dancer performing across a galactic stage. You feel suspended in time, observing cosmic mechanics and chemistry interweaving, your mind tracing invisible trajectories while the universe unfolds patiently before you. Orbits drift slow, light glints faint, shadows bend, currents hum. You imagine the ancient civilizations who once recorded celestial cycles, their minds tracing the heavens with naked eyes and early instruments. Perhaps they noted repeated alignments, marking calendars with precision that now echoes across millennia. Their records may have seemed symbolic or spiritual, yet now you perceive them as faint whispers of understanding, hints that human consciousness was being subtly guided toward observation, comprehension, and the anticipation of transformation. You feel the absurd intimacy, millennia connecting humans, planetary motion, and Atlas in a web of slow, deliberate orchestration. Time stretches slow, polar ice shifts faint, currents drift, light bends. You might picture Atlas responding to the alignment, micro adjustments in trajectory, gentle emissions of chemical plumes, and precise nudges across Martian surface chemistry. The convergence magnifies effects, ensuring maximum efficiency for the awakening of dormant processes. You feel the rhythm, slow, deliberate, and almost imperceptible, yet carrying consequences of planetary scale significance. The absurd intimacy comforts, timing so precise it bridges civilizations, eons, and light years, converging in a single orchestrated moment. Calendars align soft, shadows curl, gases rise, ice glints. You notice the invisible interplay between timing and chemistry. Microplumes, released by Atlas, interact with Martian ice and atmosphere in a cascade that is optimized for this precise window. Each molecular reaction occurs with patient elegance, triggered by cosmic timing rather than human perception. You feel the poetic absurdity, a world awakening according to a clock billions of years in the making, while you, suspended in imagination, trace rhythms beyond ordinary comprehension. Gravitational tugs faint, currents hum, light glints soft, ice shifts. You imagine observers on Earth noting faint changes in instruments, unaware that their data coincides with a convergence billions of miles away. Telescopes, orbiters, and rovers measure subtle temperature variations, tiny plumes of gas, and chemical shifts, all enhanced by the perfect alignment of planetary orbits. You sense the gentle irony, human observation, synchronizing unknowingly with a cosmic event planned over millennia. Curiosity, intersecting with preparation, awe tinged with helplessness. Orbits trace slow, frost bends faint, particles drift, light refracts. You picture the culmination, Atlas precisely positioned, Mars chemically primed, and the solar system's mechanics reinforcing subtle changes. Each micro-event resonates with the next, producing effects exponentially greater than their individual magnitude. You feel the absurd intimacy, witnessing coordination across time, space, and chemistry that no single human mind could fully grasp. Yet the rhythm is perceptible enough to evoke wonder, patience, and imagination. Currents shift soft, gases rise faint, shadows bend, ice glimmers. You notice the broader resonance. This alignment is not only a technical achievement but a quiet cosmic lesson. Timing, preparation, observation, and subtle influence converge to demonstrate the elegance of scale, the necessity of patience, and the power of invisible orchestration. You feel suspended in rhythm, marveling at the absurdly intimate elegance of events unfolding across light years and centuries, all converging on a single, imperceptible moment. And so, You linger with the October convergence, suspended in imagination and awe. Atlas reaches its optimal position. Mars stands poised for subtle awakening, and human perception hums quietly along. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, cosmic timing, and the absurd intimacy of observing synchronization crafted over eons. A gentle pivot where planets, minds, and preparation intersect in delicate, quiet perfection. Imagine reading ancient tablets describing sky beings who arrived from Sagittarius, traveling worlds, engineering, or careful metaphors for minds now vanished. You feel the pull of curiosity pressing softly against your imagination, like tracing a shadow cast by a flickering candle across the walls of time. The absurd intimacy delights, humans writing in clay, capturing glimpses of events and knowledge encoded in ways their contemporaries might not fully comprehend. You notice the textures of these tablets, faint impressions of cuneiform pressed into clay, symbols carefully arranged, stories recorded with patience. Each wedge-shaped mark is a testament to observation, memory, and interpretation, perhaps capturing fragments of knowledge passed down from generations who observed celestial phenomena long before our instruments existed. You might imagine holding one in your hand, feeling its cool weight, sensing the presence of minds attuned to patterns in the heavens, aware of alignments that now intersect with Atlas's journey across time and space. Symbols curl soft, shadows stretch faint, light glints, impressions hum. You imagine scribes working under the pale glow of lamps, watching the night sky, noting the movement of stars, planets, and comets. Their stories may be allegorical, yet the precision with which they track cycles, repetitions, and unusual celestial events hints at observation beyond myth. You feel the absurd intimacy, human consciousness reaching toward cosmic comprehension, leaving traces in clay, unaware that millennia later, you will connect these stories to a vessel carrying chemical payloads across the solar system. Orbits bend faint, stars glimmer soft, inscriptions curl, light drifts. You notice the resonance between Atlas's trajectory and the stories recorded in these tablets. The timing, direction, and implied purpose of the sky beings echo the path of a vessel orchestrating planetary transformation. Could the ancients have observed the same currents now guiding Atlas, or are their words a metaphor for comprehension beyond language? You sense the gentle poetry, human curiosity, and observation, persisting across thousands of years, intersecting subtly with processes unfolding across millions of miles. Dust drifts soft, frost glints faint, light bends, shadows linger. You might imagine reading translations of these tablets, seeing repeated references to cycles, journeys from distant stars, and the influence of celestial visitors. Each line is both mysterious and familiar, hinting at knowledge preserved through ritual, story, and memory. The absurd intimacy delights, human imagination mirroring cosmic processes, encoding awareness in language, preparing the mind for comprehension, and leaving a trail that centuries later aligns with observation, science, and planetary orchestration. Plumes rise faint, inscriptions glimmer, light refracts, particles drift. You feel the rhythm of ancient observation, the careful watching of skies, the patient recording of anomalies, and the transmission of knowledge across generations. Humans were engaged in slow, deliberate acts of comprehension, encoding awareness of forces beyond immediate control, much like you now witness the subtle transformations guided by Atlas. You sense the absurd poetry, continuity across time, linking human perception, celestial mechanics, and deliberate orchestration in ways both visible and hidden. Celestial alignments drift soft, shadows bend faint, Inscriptions shift. Light hums. You notice the broader significance. These Mesopotamian stories may have been a form of early cognitive conditioning, nurturing observation, pattern recognition, and imagination in minds destined to perceive subtler processes. Their symbolic language conveys not only myth, but an embedded curriculum of awareness, a quiet lesson spanning centuries. You feel the gentle intimacy, ancient scribes unknowingly participating in a cosmic pedagogy, their words resonating across millennia to intersect with planetary scale preparation. Patterns repeat faint, light glints soft, currents drift, knowledge hums. You might imagine following the tablet's narratives like a map, connecting clues about cycles, star alignments, and strange visitors to the present-day observation of Mars and Atlas. The absurd intimacy comforts, human curiosity and imagination, once recorded in clay, now link across time and space, offering hints, echoes, and resonance that bridge ancient minds and modern comprehension. And so, you linger with the Mesopotamian echoes, suspended in awe of human observation, ancient storytelling, and the subtle resonance between millennia-old knowledge and planetary orchestration. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, wonder, and the absurdly intimate poetry of consciousness across generations, marveling at the continuity of awareness tracing paths from Sagittarius to Mars, from clay tablets to cosmic engineering. Picture a payload designed to modify a planet's atmosphere. CO2, water vapor, a recipe for awakening. Atlas carries the tools not to observe, but to create, to terraform, to stir the red sands of Mars into a slow, deliberate pulse of life. Let's drift gently into the delicate mechanics of planetary change. Picture a payload designed to modify a planet's atmosphere. CO2, water vapor, a recipe for awakening. Atlas carries the tools not to observe, but to create, to terraform, to stir the red sands of Mars into a slow, deliberate pulse of life. You feel the rhythm of intention pressing softly against your imagination, like a gentle heartbeat, guiding dormant chemistry across a cold, barren surface. The absurd intimacy delights. You are suspended in wonder, tracing the invisible paths of molecules as they prepare to awaken an entire world. You notice the composition of the payload, precise ratios of gases, carefully layered with water ice, designed to interact with surface minerals and polar ice sheets. Each component has a purpose, a role in coaxing dormant reactions into motion. You might imagine touching a fragment of CO2 frozen in ice, feeling the subtle potential energy trapped within, ready to release in response to atmospheric cues. The universe feels absurdly intimate, Atlas carrying a symphony of chemistry, orchestrating planetary scale transformation with patient elegance. Plumes rise slow, frost shifts faint, particles drift, light bends. You imagine Atlas releasing microdoses of gas, watching plumes curl across the surface, interacting with ice, dust, and chemical layers. Each emission is deliberate, precise, and measured to optimize reactions. You sense the poetry of intention. Change is not forced, but guided, subtle yet cumulatively profound, a dance of matter that hums quietly beneath observation. The absurd intimacy comforts, chemistry arranged with the elegance of a painter's brush, reaching across millions of miles, affecting both planet and observer. Currents drift soft, ice glints faint, gases curl, light refracts. You notice the payload's interaction with the Martian surface. CO2 interacts with frozen water. Microcurrents of gas circulate across ice sheets, and chemical ratios adjust to facilitate slow warming. The process is invisible to casual observation, yet precise beyond human comprehension. You feel suspended in time, floating alongside Atlas, tracing invisible currents, watching dormant matter respond in delicate increments to centuries of preparation. The absurd intimacy delights. The very act of creation unfolds quietly, patiently, and elegantly, unseen, yet profoundly significant. Particles drift soft, frost shifts faint, light glimmers, gases hum. You might imagine the payload as a set of instructions encoded in chemistry itself, a gentle nudge toward activation. Each molecule moves as intended, a participant in a planetary-scale symphony orchestrated across eons. The rhythm is hypnotic, slow, deliberate, and precise, a whisper of creation carried in the cold void. You feel the absurd intimacy, a world awakening without spectacle, a universe performing with patience, and you, suspended in imagination, tracing the elegant unfolding of life's potential. Shifts occur faint, currents twist soft, ice sighs, particles lift. You notice the subtle patterns emerging as plumes interact with frost and surface layers. Micro-reactions create gradients of temperature and chemical composition, laying the groundwork for larger transformations. Each adjustment is precise yet gentle, calculated across eons of preparation, producing effects that will ripple outward over months and years. You sense the poetry, a silent orchestration of matter, chemistry, and planetary preparation, all directed with absurdly elegant intention. Ice glimmers soft, plumes curl faint, gases rise, light bends. You imagine the red sands responding subtly, warming in micro-layers, dust shifting slightly, chemicals redistributing in imperceptible patterns. Each effect is amplified by precise ratios, timing, and release from Atlas's payload. The process is deliberate, invisible, and patient, a slow coaxing of a dormant world toward potential awakening. You feel the absurd intimacy, the quiet power of creation carried across millions of miles, the slow pulse of life emerging imperceptibly from preparation and precision. Currents drift faint, frost bends, particles rise soft, light refracts. You notice the broader significance. Atlas's payload is more than chemistry. It is an orchestration of planetary transformation, teaching patience, precision, and subtle influence. Each micro-event contributes to a larger, cumulative effect, invisible to casual observation, but profoundly shaping the fate of Mars. You feel suspended in awareness, tracing chemical plumes, microcurrents, and reactions unfolding in deliberate rhythm. And so, you linger with the payload of transformation, observing Atlas's careful orchestration. CO2 and water vapor interact. Ice responds, and the red sands begin their slow, deliberate pulse toward awakening. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, wonder, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing creation across time and space, marveling at a process designed with precision, patience, and purpose beyond human imagination. Imagine the thin Martian ice sheets, waiting for subtle activation, the release of gases, the warming of surface layers, the awakening of dormant chemistry. It all begins quietly, like dawn breaking over a desert, imperceptible at first. Let's drift slowly to the poles of Mars, where silence dominates and change is imperceptible. Imagine the thin Martian ice sheets, waiting for subtle activation, the release of gases, the warming of surface layers, the awakening of dormant chemistry. It all begins quietly, like dawn breaking over a desert, imperceptible at first. You feel the intimacy of observation pressing softly against your imagination, like standing on a ridge where sunlight is just touching the frost. watching micro-events unfold over miles of frozen landscape. The absurd intimacy delights, a planet waiting patiently, while you hover suspended in awareness, tracing the invisible steps of awakening. You notice the textures of the ice, layered sheets, delicate and translucent, fractured in places, yet uniform enough to carry subtle currents of gas released by Atlas's payload. Each plume interacts with frost, carrying heat and chemical energy across the surface in imperceptible patterns. You might imagine touching a patch of frost and feeling a micro-warmth, evidence of subtle activation hidden in the frozen Martian air. The universe feels absurdly intimate, a silent orchestra of molecules dancing in preparation, each movement deliberate, patient, and powerful beyond immediate perception. Frost shifts soft, plumes rise faint, currents drift, light bends. You imagine the chemical reactions beginning, CO2 diffusing into microchannels within the ice, water vapor rising gently, tiny temperature differentials spreading across frozen layers. The process is gradual, measured in days and months, yet cumulative in effect. You sense the rhythm of the awakening, slow, precise, deliberate, orchestrated to nudge Mars from dormancy toward potential life. The absurd intimacy comforts, a transformation that is invisible to the casual observer, yet profoundly significant. A quiet prelude to planetary activation. Ice glimmers soft, gases curl faint, light refracts, shadows stretch. You notice microcurrents forming within and above the ice sheets. Each plume nudges molecules into reaction, tiny shifts in temperature, encouraging subtle chemical interactions. Dust, frost, and residual gases respond in a delicate choreography, invisible yet exquisitely ordered. You might picture standing on a ridge overlooking a vast polar plateau, seeing only glints and faint movements, yet imagining the immense orchestration at play. The absurd intimacy delights, a planetary symphony unfolding silently, your imagination tracing every invisible note. Currents drift faint, frost bends, gases rise soft, light glints. You imagine observing the first visible signs, thin wisps of vapor rising against the horizon, subtle warming detected by orbiters and rovers, faint spectral signatures of chemical change. These are the first acknowledgements of activation, small and quiet, yet marking the beginning of a larger process. You sense the poetry, Mars slowly breathing, responding to preparation executed over eons. The rhythm of transformation, imperceptible yet undeniable to those attuned to it. Particles lift soft, ice shimmers faint, currents hum, shadows fold. You notice the interplay between chemical activation and thermal response. Tiny pockets of ice melt slightly, releasing trapped gases, which diffuse across the surface, nudging further reactions. Each interaction is deliberate, forming a chain of cause and effect that builds quietly over time. You feel the absurd intimacy, invisible forces orchestrating planetary change, while your mind traces each micro-movement, suspended in awe and comprehension. Subtle plumes rise, frost glints, currents curl, light refracts. You imagine the role of Atlas in this activation. Precise emissions, careful positioning, and timing, all orchestrating a slow transformation. The ice sheets act as both medium and messenger, translating molecular nudges into measurable effects across miles of frozen landscape. The absurd poetry comforts, change without spectacle, influence without noise, patience measured in centuries, and you, observing in quiet suspension, marveling at the invisible elegance of preparation. Ice shifts slow, gases drift faint, particles glimmer, light bends soft. You notice the first signs of rhythm, repeated patterns in chemical dispersal, thermal gradients propagating slowly, ice responding in micro-oscillations. Observation, whether by human instruments or imagination, reveals only fragments, yet each fragment connects to the larger orchestration. You feel suspended between scales, molecular, planetary, and cosmic, appreciating the precision and patience of activation occurring beyond immediate perception. And so, you linger with the signs in the polar ice, watching Mars awaken imperceptibly. Plumes rise, frost responds, chemistry stirs, and the planet breathes slowly beneath your imagination. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, observation, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing activation across eons, marveling at the quiet elegance of a dormant world, responding to preparation with subtle, deliberate motion. Picture earlier visitors, scouts perhaps, preparing the stage for Atlas. Their fleeting appearances, subtle chemical signatures left behind, hint at a methodical plan unfolding across decades and centuries. Let's drift gently into the subtle echoes of the past, where prior journeys quietly shaped the stage for Atlas. Picture earlier visitors, scouts perhaps, preparing the stage for Atlas. Their fleeting appearances, subtle chemical signatures left behind, hint at a methodical plan unfolding across decades and centuries. You feel the weight of continuity pressing softly against your imagination, like tracing faint footprints in Martian dust that have persisted unnoticed for centuries. The absurd intimacy delights, a series of actors, invisible to one another and to humans, orchestrating preparation that spans generations and light years. You notice the traces they left, microplumes of gas, minute shifts in surface chemistry, tiny adjustments in frost layers, all carefully placed to prime the environment. These interlopers did not dominate, they nudged and measured, observing consequences with patience beyond human comprehension. You might imagine standing on the Martian surface, following invisible trails that ripple subtly through frost and dust, evidence of purposeful intervention by intelligence, older and more deliberate than any human civilization. The absurd intimacy comforts, small acts accumulating across centuries, guiding the future without fanfare, unnoticed yet profound. Traces drift soft, frost glimmers faint, currents hum, light bends. You imagine the movements of Oumuamua and 2 Eoros as careful reconnaissance, silently scanning terrain, releasing microdoses of chemicals, observing the slow effects of subtle emissions. Each action was deliberate, intended to condition the environment for Atlas's eventual arrival. You sense the rhythm of preparation, centuries of methodical testing, measurement, and intervention, all invisible to casual observers, yet crucial for the orchestration of planetary transformation. The absurd intimacy delights, a chain of preparation stretching across generations, an invisible hand guiding Mars toward awakening. Chemical plumes rise faint, ice shifts slow, particles drift, shadows curl. You notice the elegant subtlety. No forceful interventions, no visible spectacles, only incremental adjustments and patient observation. The interlopers' activities left traces in chemistry, frost, and microcurrents, each subtly shaping reactions to facilitate eventual transformation. You feel the poetry, a quiet dialogue across time between the first scouts and Atlas, a conversation conducted in molecules, temperature gradients, and precise placement of plumes. You are suspended in imagination, tracing their invisible work and marveling at the patience encoded in planetary preparation. Currents drift soft, light glints faint, gases curl, ice glimmers. You might picture the interlopers' fleeting appearances, brief excursions across Martian plains, precise measurements of surface layers, and tiny emissions that ripple subtly over decades. Humans, if observing, would detect only fragments, a faint chemical anomaly, a subtle atmospheric change, a micro-disturbance in ice. Yet cumulatively, these traces created a framework for Atlas, establishing conditions and calibrating responses for the grand orchestration to come. The absurd intimacy comforts, history written not in monuments, but in molecules, frozen currents, and faint traces of intervention. Particles drift soft, frost shifts faint, light refracts, currents hum. You notice the meticulousness of these interlopers. Their interventions were small enough to escape notice, yet precise enough to influence planetary-scale chemical interactions. Each subtle emission, every minor adjustment, contributed to conditioning the environment for activation. You feel suspended in rhythm, observing centuries of preparation, invisible yet deliberate, unfolding silently across a frozen world. Every micro-action, a note in a symphony of preparation. Ice glimmers soft, gases rise faint, particles curl, light bends. You imagine the interlopers leaving subtle instructions encoded in chemical ratios, temperature gradients, and plumes of gas. Atlas would arrive to inherit a landscape already partially conditioned, ready for activation and transformation. The absurd intimacy delights, a planetary-scale relay of preparation, conducted quietly over decades and centuries, with each participant unaware of the full plan, yet perfectly aligned in purpose. Currents drift faint, frost shifts slow, light glints, shadows fold. You sense the continuity between past and present, Oumuamua and two Eoros, preparing the stage, Atlas following the path, and you observing from imagination, suspended in awareness. The faint chemical trails, the subtle surface shifts, the invisible plumes, all contribute to a layered orchestration of planetary transformation, an orchestration billions of miles in scale, centuries in preparation, yet quietly perceptible in thought and imagination. And so, you linger with the historical interlopers, tracing their subtle influence across time and Martian surface. Microplumes drift, frost responds, chemical signatures shift, and preparation hums quietly beneath observation. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, wonder, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing centuries of patient orchestration, marveling at the invisible actors who laid the groundwork for Atlas's ultimate mission. Imagine watching through telescopes as subtle changes ripple across Mars. Rovers and orbiters record shifts in pressure, temperature, and chemistry, unaware that they serve as instruments in a drama spanning light years. Let's drift gently back to human perspective, where curiosity meets subtle orchestration. Imagine watching through telescopes as subtle changes ripple across Mars. Rovers and orbiters record shifts in pressure, temperature, and chemistry, unaware that they serve as instruments in a drama spanning light years. You feel the absurd intimacy, human observation, intersecting with planetary transformation, curiosity functioning as both measurement and participation, every glance feeding processes orchestrated across eons. The frozen surface shifts imperceptibly, gases rise faintly, and chemical ratios adjust, all amplified by instruments unaware of the cosmic choreography in which they are enmeshed. You notice the textures in observation, screens glowing softly, data streaming line by line, spectral signatures flashing across monitors. Each image and measurement is a fragment of understanding, yet it contributes unknowingly to a grander story. You might imagine leaning over a console, fingers poised on controls, eyes tracing graphs of faint temperature changes, wind currents, and chemical dispersal. The absurd intimacy comforts, human diligence, meticulous and patient, participating indirectly in planetary-scale processes designed by intelligence older than civilizations. Currents drift soft, frost glints faint, light refracts, gases hum. You picture rovers inching across the red soil, their wheels tracing patterns in dust untouched by human feet. Each sensor reads minuscule variations, mapping changes invisible to the naked eye. Orbiters track atmospheric shifts and subtle surface warming, transmitting data back across millions of miles. You feel the rhythm of observation, slow, deliberate, cumulative, a gentle hum connecting human perception to Martian transformation and Atlas's patient orchestration. Ice glimmers soft, plumes curl faint, particles drift, light bends. You imagine the absurd poetry of this process. Human instruments serving as extensions of perception, measuring, recording, and transmitting the outcomes of actions and emissions orchestrated long before humans arrived. Every dataset contributes, subtly, to a cosmic classroom, teaching insight through observation, preparation through recording, and comprehension through attention. You feel suspended in time, aware that your imagination mirrors this quiet network of observation and influence. Particles drift faint, currents hum, frost shifts, light refracts. You notice the delicate interplay between measurement and planetary response. Temperature shifts, gas diffusion, and chemical reactions unfold imperceptibly, yet human instruments capture them with precision. Each reading, however minor, contributes to a subtle understanding that resonates across observers. The absurd intimacy delights humans measuring what they do not fully control, their curiosity feeding the narrative while remaining blissfully unaware of the larger orchestration. Shadows stretch slow, light glints faint, gases rise soft, ice shimmers. You might imagine the sensation of patience, the slow cadence of observation as data accumulates day by day. Human comprehension builds incrementally, like microcurrents gathering momentum to ripple across an ocean. Each calculation, each hypothesis, each analysis participates in the larger drama unfolding on Mars, where subtle transformations echo across chemical layers, ice sheets, and atmospheric pockets. You feel the absurd intimacy, a silent dialogue across space, connecting mind, instrument, and planetary process. Currents twist soft, frost bends faint, light refracts, particles drift. You notice the psychological dimension. Observers anticipate results, analyze patterns, and adjust strategies based on incomplete information. Their awareness is both limited and profound, capturing fragments while interpreting processes far larger than their immediate instruments can reveal. You sense the poetry, humans unknowingly participating in a slow-motion choreography of transformation, their attentiveness feeding the rhythm of planetary awakening. Gases rise faint, ice glimmers soft, currents drift, shadows fold. You imagine standing alongside these observers, tracing every spectral signature, noting each subtle micro-shift in pressure and temperature. The absurd intimacy comforts, human diligence, amplifying planetary processes, curiosity woven into a narrative that spans eons and light years. You exhale slowly, tracing connections between measurement and effect, observation and orchestration, imagination and reality. And so, you linger with observation from Earth, suspended in awe of human curiosity, instruments, and the subtle transformations of Mars. Plumes rise, frost responds, chemical ratios shift, and data streams hum quietly across the void. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, awareness, and the absurdly intimate poetry of observing a drama orchestrated across light years, marveling at the delicate interplay of perception, preparation, and planetary-scale orchestration. Picture human observers witnessing transformation, their minds grasping at the improbable. The very act of seeing a planet awaken is both awe-inspiring and subtly conditioning, a demonstration of capabilities far beyond human technology. Let's drift gently into the delicate intersection of perception and transformation. Picture human observers witnessing transformation, their minds grasping at the improbable. The very act of seeing a planet awaken is both awe-inspiring and subtly conditioning, a demonstration of capabilities far beyond human technology. You feel the tension of comprehension pressing softly against your imagination, like standing at the edge of a vast desert watching the slow, imperceptible shimmer of heat waves on the horizon. The absurd intimacy delights. Humans watching processes they cannot control, yet profoundly affected by observation, absorbing lessons encoded in planetary awakening. You notice the textures of human experience, eyes widening at subtle plumes of gas, fingers hovering over instruments, minds racing to interpret faint chemical changes. Each observer contributes, even unintentionally, to the rhythm of comprehension, learning patience, perception, and the subtlety of influence. You might imagine standing alongside a scientist, feeling the pulse of excitement and doubt, the awe of witnessing phenomena orchestrated on scales far larger than human experience. The absurd intimacy comforts, humans participating psychologically in a planetary-scale experiment, minds subtly attuned to forces beyond immediate comprehension. Light glints soft, currents drift faint, frost shimmers, particles hum. You imagine the psychological dimension unfolding. Observation, conditioning, awareness. The act of watching Mars transform teaches patience, expands perspective, and introduces humility. Humans are being prepared indirectly, experiencing the scope of deliberate orchestration, internalizing lessons of subtlety and restraint. You feel suspended in time. Perception itself becomes a tool, observation itself becomes education, and curiosity becomes an instrument of subtle conditioning. Ice shifts slow, gases rise faint, light refracts, currents curl. You notice the interplay between what is observed and how it shapes cognition. Each micro-change on Mars, a plume, a shift in frost, a subtle warming of a surface layer, elicits responses from human observers. Curiosity sparks, hypotheses form, emotional reactions ripple. This is psychological proof. The planet awakens not only chemically but conceptually, demonstrating the reach of influence and the elegance of patient orchestration. You sense the absurd intimacy, Mars as teacher, humans as learners, consciousness expanding quietly across time and light years. Particles drift soft, frost glints faint, currents hum, light bends. You imagine the process as a silent feedback loop. Humans observe, instruments record, minds interpret, and in doing so, they internalize lessons on scale, patience, and precision. Each observation reinforces comprehension, while the planet continues its slow awakening, entirely unaware of the subtle conditioning occurring in the minds watching. The absurd intimacy delights, psychological transformation, mirroring planetary change, perception aligned with preparation, understanding growing as awakening progresses. Currents drift faint, ice shifts soft, gases curl, light refracts. You notice the rhythm of subtle psychological engagement. Each observer is unknowingly part of an experiment on cognition, understanding consequences, observing cumulative effects, and calibrating mental models of planetary systems. The act of seeing reinforces comprehension of scale, chemistry, and orchestration. You feel the poetry, a silent lesson unfolding across miles of frozen surface and human perception. invisible, yet profoundly transformative. Shadows stretch slow, frost glimmers faint, currents drift, light hums. You imagine the awe, humans recognizing patterns, marveling at phenomena that exceed their instruments, contemplating capabilities far beyond immediate comprehension. Each reaction, curiosity, hypothesis, excitement, is noted in the rhythm of learning, reinforcing both observation and understanding. You feel suspended in awareness, psychological proof unfolding in parallel with chemical activation, each complementing the other in subtle, deliberate harmony. Particles drift soft, gases rise faint, ice shimmers, light bends. You might picture Mars itself as a gentle teacher, orchestrating lessons through chemistry and transformation. Observers learn patience, the elegance of subtlety, and the magnitude of scale. Psychological conditioning flows naturally, unforced, embedded in the awe of witnessing processes far larger and older than any human mind. You sense the absurd intimacy. Observing awakens not just the planet, but human comprehension, preparing minds for understanding subtle orchestration across time and space. And so, you linger with terraforming as psychological proof, suspended in awe and perception. Mars awakens imperceptibly, human minds grasp at the improbable, and Atlas orchestrates with patient precision. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, observation, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing planetary and psychological transformation unfolding in parallel, marveling at the elegance, subtlety, and quiet poetry of comprehension far beyond human technology. Imagine control so quiet it feels invisible, a reshaping of worlds and minds without force. Atlas's mission is not a battle. It is a slow, elegant orchestration, teaching humans what they may yet become willing partners or passive observers. Let's drift gently into the quiet art of influence. Imagine control so quiet it feels invisible, a reshaping of worlds and minds without force. Atlas's mission is not a battle. It is a slow, elegant orchestration, teaching humans what they may yet become willing partners or passive observers. You feel the subtle weight of observation pressing softly against your imagination, like standing on a ridge, while a gentle wind shifts the sands below in imperceptible waves. The absurd intimacy delights, a planet being guided, minds being shaped, all without coercion, through patience, precision, and quiet orchestration. You notice the textures of subtle control, plumes of gas curling gently over ice, microcurrents nudging chemical reactions, and surface layers warming incrementally. Each microaction is deliberate, yet invisible to casual observation. Atlas guides Mars with the quiet patience of a teacher, shaping responses and reactions without imposing force. You might imagine floating above the surface, tracing faint trails of chemical activation and atmospheric shifts, observing how subtle adjustments accumulate into planetary scale change. The absurd intimacy comforts, influence without awareness, instruction without speech, guidance woven into the very fabric of matter. Currents drift soft, frost glimmers faint, gases curl, light refracts. You imagine the psychological dimension of subtle conquest. Humans observe transformations on Mars, interpret data, and feel awe, curiosity, or wonder. Their minds are engaged, learning patience, perception, and comprehension, without realizing they are participating in a narrative far larger than themselves. Each observation is a lesson, each discovery a gentle nudge toward understanding cosmic orchestration. You feel suspended in time, observer and observed, planet and consciousness, all intertwined in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Particles drift soft, ice shifts faint, light glints, currents hum. You notice the elegance of Atlas's orchestration. It does not dictate outcomes, it facilitates responses, allowing both Mars and humanity to participate in processes that unfold with patient precision. Every microplume of gas, every subtle warming of ice, every chemical shift is a component of teaching without instruction. You feel the absurd intimacy, planetary transformation, serving as pedagogy, chemical reactions as demonstration, human curiosity as instrument of comprehension. Ice glimmers faint, gases rise soft, shadows stretch, light bends. You might picture the cumulative effects of subtle control, micro-events aggregate, producing responses across polar ice, surface layers, and atmosphere. Humans observing perceive patterns, correlations, and outcomes, while Mars responds chemically, thermally, and physically. You sense the poetry, influence invisible yet precise, shaping both matter and mind, creating a parallel evolution of comprehension and planetary transformation. The absurd intimacy delights, control that teaches without domination, orchestrates without coercion, and guides without spectacle. Currents twist faint, frost bends soft, particles drift, light refracts. You notice how subtle conquest extends to awareness itself. Observation fosters insight, attention nurtures understanding, and curiosity prepares humans for eventual comprehension of processes far beyond ordinary experience. You feel the rhythm of guidance, slow, deliberate, elegant, echoing across eons and light years, where participation is encouraged but never forced. The absurd intimacy comforts, witnessing influence so gentle it seems non-existent, yet shaping worlds and consciousness with quiet efficiency. Plumes rise faint, ice glimmers soft, light bends, currents hum. You imagine Mars as both stage and teacher, Atlas as invisible conductor, and humans as willing participants, learning lessons through observation. Each micro-event is orchestrated for clarity, precision, and cumulative impact. The planet's subtle responses create psychological proof, reinforcing perception, comprehension, and engagement. You feel suspended in imagination, tracing patterns, observing reactions, and appreciating the elegance of non-coercive orchestration. Shadows fold slow, gases drift faint, frost glints, light refracts. You notice the beauty in patience, no explosions, no drama, no forceful interference, only gentle nudges, chemical whispers, and thermal hints shaping planetary behavior. Humans observe, learn, and adapt, becoming aware of patterns, correlations, and processes far larger than their immediate understanding. You sense the absurd intimacy, minds and matter guided together, aware or unaware, in a ballet of influence spanning light years. And so, you linger with the subtle conquest, suspended in awe of quiet orchestration. Atlas reshapes Mars and minds, without force, teaching lessons in patience, perception, and collaboration. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, wonder, and the absurd intimacy of influence so delicate it feels invisible, marveling at a process that guides, educates, and awakens simultaneously across planetary and cognitive scales. Picture history repeating in subtle ways, human technology nudged toward observation rather than interference. Every rover, every orbital sensor, every scientific breakthrough may have been a step in a curriculum authored by intelligence beyond comprehension. Let's drift gently into the quiet patterns of repetition across time. Picture history repeating in subtle ways, human technology nudged toward observation rather than interference. Every rover, every orbital sensor, every scientific breakthrough may have been a step in a curriculum authored by intelligence beyond comprehension. You feel the rhythm of preparation pressing softly against your imagination, like standing at the edge of a river that has traced the same path for eons, each curve shaping the land, imperceptibly yet irrevocably. The absurd intimacy delights, humans advancing through technology and observation, guided subtly, unknowingly participating in a larger narrative of instruction across centuries and light years. You notice the textures of human advancement, sensors calibrated to detect minute variations in atmospheric pressure, instruments designed to measure chemical ratios with incredible precision, and rovers traversing surface patterns with slow, deliberate intent. Each technological achievement, however mundane it may appear, fits into a larger framework of subtle guidance. You might imagine the engineers and scientists unaware that their innovations are not just tools for discovery, but instruments participating in a curriculum laid out over millennia. The absurd intimacy comforts, progress unfolding with quiet orchestration, preparing minds to comprehend and respond to phenomena far beyond ordinary human scale. Currents drift faint, frost glimmers soft, light refracts, instruments hum. You imagine the repeating cycles of technology and observation. Early telescopes trained on Mars, orbiters launched to measure polar ice, rovers exploring surface chemistry, all are steps in a deliberate cadence of guidance. Each observation feeds understanding, and each innovation nudges humans further along a path prepared for them. You sense the elegance, repetition as teaching, cycles as calibration, discovery as lesson. The absurd intimacy delights, human progress aligned with the rhythm of planetary and cosmic orchestration, advancing without awareness of the greater pattern. Particles drift soft, light glints faint, currents curl, frost shifts. You notice the interplay between human ingenuity and subtle influence. Each rover mission, each orbital survey, each spectrometer reading has been guided, if imperceptibly, toward observation. Interference is discouraged, understanding encouraged, curiosity nurtured. You feel suspended in time, a slow dance of learning, where human cognition and planetary processes coalesce under invisible guidance. The absurd intimacy comforts, observation as education, comprehension as participation, awareness unfolding gradually across generations. Gases rise faint, ice glimmers soft, light refracts, currents hum. You might imagine the lessons embedded in repeated patterns, the cycles of exploration, innovation, and scientific methodology. Humans refine their instruments, analyze their data, and adjust procedures, all unknowingly learning patience, precision, and perception. Each cycle reinforces understanding, embedding subtle conditioning that prepares observers for larger-scale comprehension. You feel the poetry, intelligence beyond immediate perception, shaping not only outcomes but the very minds capable of interpreting them. Shadows fold slow, frost shifts faint, currents drift, light glints. You notice the elegance of these cycles of guidance, subtle, patient, and deliberate. Historical repetition is not accidental. Technology, observation, and discovery follow pathways designed to cultivate comprehension. Micro-events accumulate over decades and centuries, creating patterns that humans can detect only after careful observation. Yet each pattern reinforces a curriculum beyond ordinary perception. You feel the absurd intimacy, the evolution of awareness intertwined with planetary orchestration, learning through subtle nudges rather than forceful instruction. Particles drift soft, light bends faint, ice shimmers, currents curl. You imagine each breakthrough as a checkpoint, a demonstration of human capability, a lesson in observation, and a subtle conditioning of perception. These cycles reinforce attentiveness, patience, and analytical thinking, while simultaneously preparing minds to comprehend planetary transformation. You feel suspended in rhythm, observing the interplay of guidance and cognition, noting how history, technology, and observation intertwine in delicate orchestration. Currents twist faint, frost glints soft, light refracts, gases rise. You notice how subtle guidance persists across centuries, shaping instruments, missions, and human cognition in parallel. Each cycle builds upon the previous, reinforcing understanding and perception, preparing humans to notice, interpret, and engage with phenomena orchestrated on scales far larger than immediate comprehension. The absurd intimacy delights, a curriculum extending across generations, encoded in technology, observation, and the very act of learning itself. And so, you linger with the cycles of guidance, suspended in awe of history, technology, and subtle orchestration. Rovers traverse, orbiters measure, and human comprehension advances quietly, guided by invisible hands. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, observation, and the absurd intimacy of participating unknowingly in a curriculum authored across centuries and light years, marveling at the elegance, patience, and subtle poetry of deliberate guidance shaping both minds and worlds. Imagine consciousness stretching to understand cosmic hierarchies, questioning whether humans are observers, partners, or simply biological equipment. The tension between knowledge and helplessness hums quietly beneath every observation. Let's drift gently into the delicate space between comprehension and uncertainty. Imagine consciousness stretching to understand cosmic hierarchies, questioning whether humans are observers, partners, or simply biological equipment. The tension between knowledge and helplessness hums quietly beneath every observation. You feel the weight of awareness pressing softly against your imagination, like standing at the edge of an endless cliff, peering into a void where gravity is measured in millennia and light years. The absurd intimacy delights, human cognition, grappling with incomprehensible scale, suspended between awe, understanding, and the realization of limits. You notice the textures of consciousness, the curiosity that urges observation, the analytical mind that deciphers patterns, the emotional response to phenomena beyond immediate control. Each thought, each reflection, is a thread connecting humans to processes orchestrated across eons and light years. You might imagine tracing the cosmic hierarchy with your mind, visualizing planets, interstellar vessels, and distant stars arranged in patterns of purpose, and realizing that your perception is simultaneously limited and integral to the unfolding narrative. The absurd intimacy comforts. The very act of comprehension becomes both participation and reflection, a bridge between observer and cosmos. Currents drift soft, light glints faint, particles shift, shadows bend. You imagine the tension between observation and agency. Every measurement taken, every calculation made, every hypothesis proposed brings insight, yet underscores limitation. Humans can perceive, analyze, and anticipate, but influence remains subtle and often imperceptible. You sense the poetry of helplessness intertwined with curiosity. To observe is to be implicated. To know is to feel the scale of forces that dwarf both technology and intuition. The absurd intimacy delights. Suspended in comprehension, human thought is at once powerful and profoundly constrained. Ice shimmers faint, gases rise soft, currents curl, light refracts. You notice the philosophical stakes embedded in awareness. What does it mean to perceive processes beyond human control? Are humans collaborators in a larger orchestration, passive witnesses, or instruments designed to execute observation itself? Each realization deepens understanding, while simultaneously amplifying uncertainty. You feel suspended in reflection. The universe is vast, purposeful, and patient, yet your consciousness traces connections and implications that unfold more slowly than the mind can grasp. Particles drift soft, frost glints faint, currents hum, light bends. You might picture consciousness extending beyond immediate perception, reaching toward comprehension of interstellar purpose, planetary orchestration, and subtle influence. Each observer engages in a silent dialogue with forces too immense to manipulate directly, interpreting signals, adjusting models, and calibrating understanding. The absurd intimacy comforts. Human awareness, imperfect yet essential, participates in a rhythm orchestrated across eons and scales, far beyond ordinary experience. Shadows fold slow, light glints faint, gases rise soft, ice shifts. You notice the tension between knowledge and helplessness, humming beneath every observation. Awareness grants insight, yet underscores limitations. The very act of seeing, of measuring, of interpreting, is both empowering and confining. You feel the rhythm of comprehension, curiosity, and insight, coexisting with awe and recognition of boundaries. The absurd intimacy delights, humans navigating the balance between observing and participating, learning through reflection, while planetary and cosmic processes continue unaltered. Currents drift faint, particles glimmer soft, frost shifts, light refracts. You imagine the duality of human experience. Each observation feeds understanding. Each measurement contributes to comprehension. Yet agency is often subtle, indirect, and invisible. Mars shifts imperceptibly. Atlas orchestrates silently, and humans interpret, analyze, and absorb, caught between awareness and the humbling vastness of incomprehensible scale. You feel suspended in rhythm. Observation becomes meditation, insight becomes participation, and helplessness becomes a subtle guide to patience and humility. Gases rise faint, ice glimmers soft, currents curl, shadows fold. You notice the delicate interplay of choice, comprehension, and awareness. Humanity can act, learn, and innovate, but must also recognize the limits of immediate influence. The absurd intimacy comforts. Observation itself is an act of subtle participation, and awareness is both tool and consequence, guiding perception and response while reflecting the immense orchestration at work across planets and light years. And so, you linger with the choice between awareness and oblivion, suspended in awe, comprehension, and gentle helplessness. Consciousness stretches, human minds trace hierarchies, and observation hums quietly alongside cosmic orchestration. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, insight, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing processes far larger than yourself, marveling at the delicate balance between knowing, participating, and accepting limits imposed by time, scale, and cosmic design. Picture humanity facing choices hidden in plain sight: evolve to integrate, or remain independent and risk irrelevance. The lines between freedom and subordination blur, wrapped in the slow, deliberate unfolding of Martian terraforming. Let's drift gently into the quiet tension of choice. Picture humanity facing choices hidden in plain sight: evolve, to integrate, or remain independent and risk irrelevance. The lines between freedom and subordination blur, wrapped in the slow, deliberate unfolding of Martian terraforming. You feel the subtle weight of consequence pressing softly against your imagination, like standing on a ridge overlooking shifting sands, where every step is meaningful yet measured, every movement part of a larger orchestration. The absurd intimacy delights. Humans navigating decisions encoded in planetary change, tracing invisible currents of consequence across Mars and cognition alike. You notice the textures of decision, minds analyzing data from orbiters, fingers poised over consoles controlling rovers, communities debating strategies for observation and engagement. Each choice, however minor, becomes part of a larger tapestry, an invisible curriculum guiding awareness, understanding, and alignment with processes beyond immediate perception. You might imagine floating alongside these decisions, observing subtle ripple effects in policy, research, and collaboration, while Mars responds imperceptibly to chemical, thermal, and atmospheric cues. The absurd intimacy comforts, choice made with consciousness, participation without force, influence without overt control. Currents drift faint, frost glimmers soft, gases rise, light bends. You imagine the dual pathways available to humanity. Integration offers the opportunity to align with processes unfolding on Mars, gaining comprehension and influence through observation and cooperation. Independence promises freedom, but carries risk, irrelevance, or missed opportunity in the subtle orchestration that spans planets, light years, and eons. You feel the rhythm of deliberation, each choice evaluated, consequences imagined, and actions executed in a landscape shaped by patience, chemistry, and invisible orchestration. Ice shifts slow, particles curl faint, light refracts, currents hum. You notice the subtle consequences of choices, decisions about research priorities, observation strategies, or technological development influence how humans interact with the processes unfolding on Mars. The planet's response shifts in frost, plumes of gas, microcurrents in the atmosphere is quiet yet measurable, reflecting the impact of cumulative human action, curiosity, and engagement. You sense the absurd intimacy, participation without full awareness, decision-making intertwined with planetary transformation, cognition shaping comprehension across eons and light years. Particles drift soft, frost glints faint, currents curl, light bends. You might picture humans grappling with the weight of integration versus independence. Scientists and policymakers weigh observation against interference, curiosity against caution, learning against action. Each decision subtly guides comprehension, aligning minds with planetary rhythms, or testing resilience and creativity. The absurd intimacy delights. Humans co-evolving with Mars, negotiating choice in parallel with chemical, thermal, and molecular changes unfolding silently beneath. Gases rise faint, ice shimmers soft, currents drift, shadows fold. You notice the cumulative effect of repeated choices over time. Integration strengthens comprehension and alignment, reinforcing cycles of observation and subtle influence. Independence tests adaptability, curiosity, and resilience, offering the possibility of innovation but risking misalignment. You feel the rhythm, human choices, interacting with planetary processes, creating a feedback loop of observation, response, and evolution across scales, both cognitive and physical. Currents drift soft, frost glimmers faint, light refracts, particles hum. You imagine the subtle shading between freedom and subordination. The binary is not absolute. The boundaries blur with careful observation, creativity, and adaptation. Each observer, scientist, and thinker, contributes to the collective trajectory, participating in the orchestration whether fully aware or not. The absurd intimacy comforts, choices made quietly, subtly, and cumulatively. Each step, a measure of alignment with planetary scale transformation and orchestration beyond immediate comprehension. Shadows fold slow, ice shifts faint, particles drift, light bends. You notice the elegance in these hidden choices. Integration does not coerce, independence does not defy, and both interact with planetary change in subtle, deliberate ways. Each micro-decision resonates across frost, chemical layers, and atmosphere, creating a rhythm of participation in which observation itself becomes an act of subtle influence. You feel suspended in awe, human minds navigating hidden pathways, balancing freedom and guidance, shaping comprehension, as Mars awakens gradually beneath, and so, you linger with the binary of survival, suspended in curiosity, comprehension, and gentle tension. Humanity navigates choice, Mars responds imperceptibly, and Atlas orchestrates patiently. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, awareness, and the absurd intimacy of observing decision, consequence, and planetary transformation unfolding in parallel, marveling at the quiet elegance of subtle alignment across minds and worlds. Imagine alternatives unseen, paths between extinction and subordination, where human creativity might carve space for genuine partnership. Atlas's mission may reveal not just power, but opportunity for those who can perceive beyond the obvious. Let's drift gently into the quiet landscape of possibility. Imagine alternatives unseen, paths between extinction and subordination, where human creativity might carve space for genuine partnership. Atlas's mission may reveal not just power, but opportunity for those who can perceive beyond the obvious. You feel the subtle weight of potential pressing softly against your imagination, like peering through a mist into a labyrinth of faintly glowing corridors. The absurd intimacy delights, human ingenuity, navigating choices invisible to casual observation, exploring hidden corridors in which comprehension, creativity, and alignment intersect. You notice the textures of these hidden paths, subtle chemical cues across Martian ice, microcurrents in the atmosphere, faint emissions from polar plumes, all intertwined with human observation and imagination. Each pathway represents a delicate balance between action and comprehension, opportunity and risk. You might imagine yourself walking one of these unseen corridors, tracing the threads of possibility while Mars responds imperceptibly. Atlas orchestrates silently, and human minds weigh choices against subtle planetary cues. The absurd intimacy comforts. Opportunity exists quietly, waiting for recognition by perceptive observers. Currents drift soft, frost glimmers faint, gases rise, light bends. You imagine the binary of extinction and subordination, giving way to gradients of potential. Integration with planetary processes, guided observation, and deliberate experimentation offer paths toward understanding and collaboration. Independence, curiosity, and creativity carve alternate routes through the landscape, sometimes risky, sometimes profound. You sense the poetry. The hidden pathways offer opportunity, waiting for minds able to recognize subtle cues, interpret faint signals, and act with insight. The absurd intimacy delights, Mars and humans co-evolving across scales, light years, and millennia, while you observe quietly. Particles drift soft, ice shifts faint, currents curl, light refracts. You notice the subtle markers along these paths. Tiny chemical shifts, micro-warmings of ice, and faint plumes of gas suggest routes where intervention is effective yet non-intrusive. Observers who notice these signals gain understanding beyond instruments alone, learning to perceive relationships between cause, effect, and timing. You feel suspended in rhythm, human creativity, interacting with planetary change, perception itself, carving pathways through previously unseen landscapes of possibility. Ice glimmers soft, gases rise faint, currents drift, shadows fold. You imagine opportunity arising where perception meets insight. Observers recognize subtle cues, patterns, and correlations in Martian responses, creating the potential for genuine partnership with orchestration already in motion. Atlas's mission demonstrates not merely power but subtle invitations. Those who perceive beyond immediate appearances may contribute meaningfully, shaping outcomes while learning lessons embedded in planetary processes. The absurd intimacy comforts, knowledge and creativity rewarded, attention rewarded, awareness itself a tool of engagement. Shadows shift slow, frost glints faint, light bends, particles drift. You notice the elegance of hidden pathways. Guidance exists, but is not prescriptive. Opportunity exists, but is subtle. Success requires attention, insight, and creativity. Each micro-event on Mars, each faint emission from polar ice, each shift in chemical ratios, constitutes a signpost along the corridor of possibility. You feel the rhythm, hidden guidance intersecting with human perception, choice intersecting with planetary transformation, awareness intersecting with opportunity. Currents twist soft, light glints faint, gases rise, ice shimmers. You might picture human minds navigating complexity, connecting dots between observation, imagination, and potential action. Each discovery, each insight, each act of curiosity contributes to understanding, revealing alternate pathways previously invisible. The absurd intimacy delights. Human perception becomes a tool of partnership, creativity, an instrument of subtle alignment, observation, a conduit for meaningful engagement with forces beyond immediate control. Particles drift faint, frost glimmers soft, currents hum, light refracts. You notice the cumulative power of perception. Those who observe carefully, interpret subtly, and act insightfully can leverage hidden pathways to transform outcomes. Mars responds incrementally, Atlas orchestrates with patient precision, and humans, aware or not, participate in a continuum of choice, creativity, and alignment. You feel suspended in awe, opportunity arising quietly in the margins, awaiting recognition by minds attuned to subtle cues across chemical, thermal, and observational landscapes. And so, you linger with false binaries and hidden paths, suspended in possibility, observation, and insight. Opportunity stretches between extinction and subordination. Human creativity traces unseen corridors, and Atlas orchestrates patiently. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, perception, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing hidden potential unfold, marveling at the quiet elegance of pathways awaiting recognition, insight, and subtle partnership across minds and worlds. Picture generations prepared subtly for the arrival of cosmic intelligence. Myths, religions, and technological development converge, guiding human consciousness into frameworks compatible with a galactic system. Let's drift gently into the quiet architecture of human thought. Picture generations prepared subtly for the arrival of cosmic intelligence. Myths, religions, and technological development converge, guiding human consciousness into frameworks compatible with a galactic system. You feel the weight of time pressing softly against your imagination, like observing ripples on a pond created centuries earlier, still echoing in the present. The absurd intimacy delights. Humans unknowingly shaped across generations, their minds tuned gradually to perceive, interpret, and engage with forces and intelligence far beyond ordinary comprehension. You notice the textures of cultural conditioning, stories passed down in oral tradition, religious rituals, encoding attention and observation, inventions, fostering analytical skills and imagination. Each layer of human development acts like sediment, accumulating over centuries to create a fertile substrate for comprehension. You might imagine tracing these patterns, the symbolism in myths reflecting cosmic cycles, technological innovation, nudging curiosity, and social structures, encouraging observation and learning. The absurd intimacy comforts, consciousness evolving patiently in alignment with processes and intelligence, operating on a scale beyond immediate perception. Symbols glimmer soft, rituals drift faint, instruments hum, light refracts. You imagine the subtle interplay of these forces, cultural narratives, preparing humans to interpret signals, technological development, providing the tools, and consciousness expanding incrementally over millennia. Observers across history contributed to this preparation unknowingly, participating in an orchestration of awareness that spans generations. You sense the poetry, a curriculum encoded in civilization itself, guiding human minds toward alignment with intelligence, orchestrating planetary and cosmic events. Currents drift soft, particles glimmer, faint, light bends, shadows fold. You notice the gentle layering of conditioning, early astronomers noting celestial patterns, religious leaders encoding caution and curiosity in stories, engineers devising instruments to extend perception. Each act, small and unnoticed at the time, contributed to preparing minds for the eventual recognition of processes unfolding on Mars and the orchestration of Atlas. You feel the absurd intimacy, subtle preparation that spans centuries, where observation, understanding, and cognition are nurtured gradually, shaping readiness across generations. Ice glimmers faint, gases rise soft, currents curl, light refracts. You might imagine the cumulative effect, human consciousness gradually aligning with subtle cues, cultural symbols, reinforcing attentiveness, technological tools, extending perception, all forming a network of awareness capable of engaging with intelligence on galactic scales. The rhythm is slow, deliberate, and elegant, a silent curriculum spanning millennia. You feel suspended in awe, awareness shaped by imperceptible influence, observation guided by history, and perception prepared for planetary and cosmic orchestration. Shadows fold slow, frost shifts faint, light glints, currents hum. You notice the patterns repeated across civilizations, myths echoing in diverse cultures, technologies converging on observation and measurement, educational systems fostering analytical thought. These layers form a scaffold, conditioning human cognition for subtle comprehension and engagement. You sense the absurd intimacy, generations unknowingly participating in preparation, minds guided toward readiness for awareness of cosmic intelligence. Particles drift soft, currents curl faint, ice glimmers, light refracts. You imagine individuals through history, internalizing these subtle lessons. Their attention, curiosity, and reflection create micro-alignments between perception and awareness, contributing to a continuity of preparedness across time. Each insight, each innovation, each cultural practice reinforces frameworks compatible with the eventual recognition of intelligence guiding planetary transformation. The absurd intimacy comforts. Humans unknowingly learning, participating, and aligning consciousness over eons. Currents drift faint, light glints soft, gases rise, frost shimmers. You notice the elegance of conditioning across millennia, gradual, patient, cumulative, and silent. The convergence of myths, religions, and technological progress subtly shapes perception, expectation, and understanding. Human minds evolve frameworks capable of interpreting, integrating, and responding to planetary-scale orchestration and intelligence beyond immediate comprehension. You feel suspended in reflection, observing preparation unfold in parallel with evolution, cognition, and cosmic orchestration. And so, you linger with psychological conditioning across millennia, suspended in awe, observation, and subtle guidance. Generations internalize lessons. Consciousness aligns quietly with processes beyond immediate perception, and Atlas orchestrates patiently. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, history, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing preparation that spans time, cognition, and planetary scale, marveling at the quiet elegance of minds gradually tuned to perceive and participate in a galactic system. Imagine knowing that your gaze, your measurements, your analyses serve a purpose beyond understanding. You watch, and yet, your very act of observation feeds a process you cannot influence, a gentle entrapment wrapped in curiosity. Let's drift gently into the quiet tension between perception and participation. Imagine knowing that your gaze, your measurements, your analyses serve a purpose beyond understanding. You watch, and yet, your very act of observation feeds a process you cannot influence, a gentle entrapment wrapped in curiosity. You feel the subtle weight of awareness pressing softly against your imagination, like standing at the edge of a vast frozen plain, observing every ripple in the ice, knowing your eyes trace consequences that reach farther than you can act. The absurd intimacy delights, human attention intertwined with planetary orchestration, perception, feeding processes on scales both enormous and subtle. You notice the textures of observation, telescopes trained, orbiters humming, data streaming across screens and instruments. Every measurement, from atmospheric pressure to subtle chemical shifts, contributes to understanding, yet you sense that understanding is only partial. You might imagine tracing each microplume rising from Martian ice, each faint shift in surface chemistry, while knowing your presence and instruments participate in a larger orchestration you cannot fully direct. The absurd intimacy comforts. Curiosity itself becomes both tool and medium. Observation, a bridge to processes beyond immediate control. Currents drift faint, ice glimmers soft, light bends, particles hum. You imagine the paradox of awareness. Observation enhances comprehension, yet highlights limitation. Each data point, each measurement, each analysis builds insight while emphasizing the vastness of scale, the depth of time, and the precision of orchestration. Humans perceive only fragments, yet their attention is essential, threading cognition into a planetary scale rhythm. You sense the poetry, knowledge as participation, comprehension as subtle engagement, and curiosity as instrument of alignment with forces beyond perception. Ice shifts soft, plumes rise faint, currents curl, light refracts. You notice the delicate interplay between agency and helplessness. Human observers can watch, record, and analyze, but direct influence is limited. Mars responds imperceptibly, Atlas adjusts silently, and humans measure, hypothesize, and learn. The absurd intimacy delights. Observation itself becomes a medium through which humans engage with orchestration, contributing to comprehension and refinement. Without overt intervention, particles drift soft, light glints faint, currents hum, frost shifts. You imagine the psychological nuance. Awareness is simultaneously empowering and constraining. Humans witness planetary change, internalize patterns, and refine models of comprehension, yet they cannot fully dictate outcomes. Observation is a gentle entrapment, a mechanism of participation embedded in attention and curiosity. You feel suspended in rhythm. The act of seeing, measuring, and analyzing becomes itself an instrument of planetary orchestration. Gases rise faint, ice glimmers soft, light bends, currents drift. You notice how the dilemma extends to collective perception. Scientists, researchers, and observers interpret data, communicate findings, and refine understanding, unknowingly contributing to the rhythm of preparation and transformation. Each micro-action, hypothesis, and insight nudges comprehension forward, reinforcing planetary and cognitive alignment. The absurd intimacy comforts. Human participation occurs without recognition, yet is essential for cumulative orchestration. Shadows fold slow, frost glints faint, currents curl, light refracts. You imagine the elegance of this recursive process. Observation feeds understanding, understanding feeds participation, and participation loops back into observation. Mars awakens imperceptibly, chemical reactions unfold, and human minds refine comprehension. You feel the absurd intimacy, awareness itself a conduit, curiosity itself an agent, and observation itself a tool in a dance, orchestrated across eons and light years. Particles drift soft, currents hum faint, ice shifts, light glints. You notice the broader rhythm. Every human gaze, every measurement, every analysis is incorporated into a larger framework. Humans are simultaneously learners and participants, their curiosity feeding processes they cannot fully direct. The absurd intimacy delights. Observation becomes a gentle instrument of planetary orchestration. Comprehension expands, and minds align with rhythms beyond immediate perception. And so, you linger with the observer's dilemma, suspended in awe, curiosity, and gentle entrapment. Human observation threads through planetary and cosmic orchestration, attention-feeding processes beyond comprehension, perception, participating in a dance of subtle influence. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, insight, and the absurd intimacy of knowing that your very act of observation participates in a narrative far larger than your mind, marveling at the delicate poetry of observation, awareness, and participation, intertwined across time, space, and consciousness. Picture Mars waking gradually, months of subtle changes accumulating into visible life. The planet itself becomes a classroom, an experiment, a demonstration of scale and precision beyond human imagination. Let's drift gently into the gradual unfolding of change. Picture Mars waking gradually, months of subtle changes accumulating into visible life. The planet itself becomes a classroom, an experiment, a demonstration of scale and precision beyond human imagination. You feel the rhythm of transformation pressing softly against your imagination, like watching ice melt slowly in a sunlit canyon, each micro-moment contributing to a landscape entirely different from what it was before. The absurd intimacy delights. You, suspended in perception, tracing the gentle, deliberate pulse of awakening that spans miles, months, and millennia. You notice the textures of change, frost subtly receding, thin plumes of CO2 curling above polar sheets, micro-warmings propagating through ice layers. Each adjustment is incremental, almost imperceptible, yet cumulatively profound. You might imagine touching a patch of ice and sensing faint warmth spreading beneath the surface, a quiet pulse heralding the slow march of chemical and atmospheric transformation. The absurd intimacy comforts, awakening occurring without spectacle, change guided with patience, and your observation tracing rhythms too vast for ordinary comprehension. Currents drift soft, frost glimmers faint, light refracts, gases rise. You imagine the cumulative effects of months of subtle shifts. Microcurrents in ice interact with CO2. Water vapor diffuses slowly through thin layers of the atmosphere, and the surface temperature adjusts imperceptibly. Each action is deliberate, orchestrated to produce maximal effect with minimal disruption. You sense the poetry, a planetary-scale symphony unfolding in slow motion, revealing processes that only patience, observation, and imagination can capture. The absurd intimacy delights, human awareness threading through subtle planetary choreography. Ice shifts faint, plumes rise soft, particles drift, light bends. You notice the psychological impact on observers. Rovers record incremental data, orbiters detect micro-variations, and scientists analyze trends, unaware that their instruments participate in a curriculum orchestrated over eons. Observation and comprehension are intertwined. As the planet transforms, human cognition traces patterns, learns patience, and internalizes lessons in scale and subtlety. You feel suspended in time. Perception becomes part of transformation. Awareness echoes planetary rhythms, and understanding grows in alignment with slow, deliberate processes. Particles drift soft, currents hum faint, frost glimmers, light refracts. You imagine Mars itself as teacher, revealing lessons in gradual change. Each chemical reaction, every micro-warming, and faint shift in pressure demonstrates the elegance of patience, precision, and orchestration. Humans observe, instruments measure, and cognition responds, participating indirectly in processes far larger than individual perception. The absurd intimacy comforts, planetary awakening, serving simultaneously as demonstration, experiment, and lesson, accessible only to those attentive to subtle rhythms. Gases rise faint, ice shimmers soft, light glints, currents curl. You notice how slow transformation magnifies comprehension. Rapid change might overwhelm observation, but gradual shifts allow insight to accumulate, patterns to emerge, and understanding to deepen. Each micro-event contributes to a cumulative demonstration of scale and precision, showing how complex processes evolve across space and time. You feel the absurd intimacy, witnessing the dance of planetary awakening, human cognition tracing its contours, and understanding deepening in quiet resonance with the slow rhythm of change. Shadows fold slow, frost glints faint, currents drift, light refracts. You imagine the feedback loop between observation and transformation. Human instruments detect subtle shifts, measurements reinforce comprehension, and understanding guides attention, even as direct influence remains minimal. Mars transforms incrementally, Atlas orchestrates silently, and humans refine mental models of planetary processes. You sense the poetry. Slow change amplifies insight. Subtle patterns teach patience, and comprehension aligns with the rhythm of eons. Currents drift faint, particles glimmer soft, light refracts, gases rise. You notice the scale. Months of imperceptible change accumulate into visible life, revealing chemical, thermal, and atmospheric patterns previously hidden. The planet becomes a classroom, the instruments become students, and human cognition participates in a silent curriculum. The absurd intimacy delights, learning embedded in observation, awareness entwined with transformation, and perception itself shaping comprehension of planetary scale orchestration. And so, you linger with transformation in slow motion, suspended in awe, observation, and subtle awakening. Mars breathes quietly, chemical reactions accumulate, and human cognition traces patterns in alignment with eons of orchestration. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, perception, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing change so deliberate and gradual, it requires patience, insight, and imagination, marveling at the quiet poetry of planetary awakening, unfolding across months, miles, and millennia. Imagine pockets of human insight, individuals who see not just Atlas, but the hidden currents shaping both Mars and humanity. Their awareness becomes the seed for evolution of consciousness, a bridge between observation and agency. Let's drift gently into the quiet unfolding of human insight. Imagine pockets of human insight, individuals who see not just Atlas, but the hidden currents shaping both Mars and humanity. Their awareness becomes the seed for evolution of consciousness, a bridge between observation and agency. You feel the subtle weight of recognition pressing softly against your imagination, like glimpsing faint trails of wind across a desert dune, revealing patterns invisible to the casual eye. The absurd intimacy delights, select minds perceiving connections across planets, time, and consciousness, tracing the invisible threads that link action, observation, and evolution. You notice the textures of insight, fleeting moments of clarity, connections forming between observations, hypotheses, and intuition. These individuals sense patterns imperceptible to most, micro-changes in ice, subtle emissions from polar plumes, faint chemical shifts, and gradual warming of the surface. Each perception is a seed, a spark in the mind capable of catalyzing broader understanding. You might imagine standing beside one such observer, watching as awareness bridges gaps between observation and agency, linking cognition to planetary processes unfolding silently beneath. The absurd intimacy comforts, consciousness emerging quietly, evolving in response to subtle cues across space and time. Currents drift soft, frost glimmers faint, light refracts, gases rise. You imagine how these pockets of insight ripple outward. Observers share knowledge, publish findings, and refine understanding, indirectly shaping broader comprehension. Their awareness is not merely intellectual but perceptual, attuned to subtle currents and hidden orchestration, recognizing interconnections between human cognition, planetary change, and Atlas's mission. You feel the rhythm of emergent understanding, insight spreading slowly, building bridges between observation and agency, connecting minds with planetary and cosmic processes. Particles drift soft, ice shifts faint, currents hum, light glints. You notice the delicate influence of perception. A single observation triggers hypotheses, experimentation, and reinterpretation. Other observers detect correlations, refine models, and expand awareness. Slowly, consciousness evolves, weaving together disparate threads of data, observation, and intuition. The absurd intimacy delights, the evolution of comprehension, occurring quietly, incrementally, and imperceptibly, yet laying the foundation for agency aligned with planetary orchestration. Ice glimmers soft, plumes rise faint, light refracts, currents drift. You might picture these individuals sensing larger patterns, Mars, awakening imperceptibly, microcurrents in ice and atmosphere, the chemical symphony of CO2 and water vapor. They perceive correlations between observation and outcome, intuition and planetary response. Their awareness becomes a seed, a tiny spark capable of growing into broader understanding of cosmic orchestration. You feel suspended in time, perception acting as catalyst, insight bridging, observation and agency, and consciousness evolving in concert with planetary and chemical rhythms. Shadows fold slow, frost glints faint, currents curl, light refracts. You notice the subtlety of this emergence, awareness arising not as dramatic revelation, but as accumulation of recognition across months, years, and decades. Each connection perceived, each pattern noticed, strengthens the bridge between observer and process, human cognition and planetary orchestration. The absurd intimacy comforts. Evolution of consciousness is patient, incremental, and profoundly intertwined with the rhythm of observation, reflection, and subtle influence. Gases rise faint, ice glimmers soft, currents drift, particles hum. You imagine the broader consequence. As pockets of insight expand, human consciousness collectively becomes more capable of recognizing subtle orchestration. Awareness grows, bridging understanding with agency, perception with intervention, observation with comprehension. You feel the poetry, knowledge and insight flowering quietly across minds, preparing humans to interact meaningfully with processes orchestrated beyond immediate perception. Currents drift soft, light glints faint, frost shifts, particles refract. You notice the elegance. Emergent awareness is not uniform, but distributed, forming networks of insight that cross disciplines, cultures, and generations. Each act of perception, each hypothesis, each insight contributes to a bridge between passive observation and meaningful agency. You feel suspended in awe, human consciousness expanding, guided by subtle cues, and tracing connections between Mars, Atlas, and the orchestration of change across space and time. And so, you linger with the emergence of consciousness beyond prediction, suspended in insight, awareness, and quiet understanding. Human perception traces hidden currents, pockets of knowledge blossom, and the bridge between observation and agency grows. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, reflection, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing consciousness evolve in quiet resonance with planetary and cosmic orchestration, marveling at the elegance, patience, and subtle poetry of emergent awareness unfolding across minds and worlds. Picture humanity's responses measured and weighed, determining compatibility with intelligence operating on galactic scales. Every emotional reaction, every analytical decision, contributes to an evaluation older than Earth itself. Let's drift gently into the quiet evaluation of consciousness. Picture humanity's responses measured and weighed, determining compatibility with intelligence operating on galactic scales. Every emotional reaction, every analytical decision, contributes to an evaluation older than Earth itself. You feel the subtle weight of assessment pressing softly against your imagination, like standing before an invisible ledger that records intention, perception, and engagement across centuries. The absurd intimacy delights. Human cognition, emotion, and curiosity, quietly feeding a test conducted on planetary and cosmic scales, a curriculum of observation and participation, measured beyond comprehension. You notice the textures of this evaluation, micro-reactions to subtle shifts on Mars, ethical deliberations in laboratories and conference halls, emotional responses to discovery and uncertainty. Each decision, each curiosity-driven action, contributes to a broader assessment of alignment, cooperation, and perceptual acuity. You might imagine floating beside humanity's collective consciousness, tracing the patterns of insight, hesitation, and understanding, knowing that every choice subtly resonates with processes unfolding far beyond immediate perception. The absurd intimacy comforts, the smallest acts of awareness and curiosity, counted, measured, and woven into an intricate evaluation spanning light years and millennia. Currents drift soft, ice glimmers faint, light refracts, gases rise. You imagine the psychological dimension of the cosmic test. Humans respond to evidence of Mars awakening, to chemical and thermal signals, and to patterns emerging from orbital and rover data. Each reaction's surprise, insight, skepticism, or excitement is noted and integrated into a cumulative measure of comprehension, adaptability, and readiness. You sense the rhythm, responses accumulating across time and minds, creating a quiet feedback loop of evaluation that transcends immediate observation. The absurd intimacy delights, awareness itself functioning as both subject and instrument of assessment. Particles drift soft, frost shifts faint, currents hum, light bends. You notice the interplay of emotional and analytical responses. Emotional curiosity drives exploration, analytical reasoning interprets data, and together they form a composite signal of engagement with planetary processes. Mars awakens imperceptibly, Atlas orchestrates silently, and humans unknowingly participate in a galactic-scale evaluation. You feel suspended in awe, human perception and reaction, functioning as metrics, each subtle decision adding to the narrative of compatibility, insight, and preparedness. Ice glimmers soft, gases rise faint, currents curl, shadows fold. You might imagine the broader scale. Not only individuals, but societies are evaluated, their capacity to respond, adapt, and innovate considered over decades and generations. Ethical decisions, collaborative projects, and the development of scientific frameworks contribute to the assessment, creating a tapestry of cognitive and emotional engagement. You sense the poetry, a quiet, patient calibration of human consciousness against parameters set by intelligence older than the planet itself. Shadows shift slow, frost glints faint, light refracts, particles drift. You notice the elegance of subtle measurement. No overt tests, no coercive interventions, only observation of natural human responses to planetary awakening and cosmic cues. Each reaction is informative, each interpretation valuable, forming a delicate matrix of comprehension and engagement. You feel the absurd intimacy, humans unknowingly participating in a sophisticated evaluation, their very curiosity and awareness feeding the assessment of compatibility with intelligence, operating on scales far beyond ordinary understanding. Currents drift faint, light glints soft, frost shimmers, gases rise. You imagine the iterative nature of the evaluation, successive observations of Mars, incremental discoveries, and repeated interpretation of data create a dynamic picture of human cognition and adaptability. Humans are measured not only by immediate reactions, but by their capacity to integrate knowledge, anticipate consequences, and collaborate across disciplines. You feel suspended in time, individual decisions echoing across planetary scales, collective comprehension shaping the narrative of subtle judgment. Particles drift soft, ice glimmers faint, currents hum, light refracts. You notice the interplay of anticipation and response, humans predicting, measuring, analyzing, and emotionally reacting to subtle planetary cues, while Mars transforms imperceptibly and Atlas orchestrates silently. Each reaction contributes to a quiet cosmic test, revealing aptitude, creativity, and alignment with subtle orchestration. You sense the absurd intimacy. Observation itself is measured, cognition itself evaluated, awareness itself. And so, you linger with the cosmic test, suspended in perception, observation, and quiet evaluation. Human responses ripple across chemical, thermal, and cognitive landscapes, contributing to a measure of compatibility with intelligence beyond comprehension. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, insight, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing awareness assessed across millennia and light years, marveling at the delicate, patient poetry of a test older than Earth, unfolding quietly across minds and worlds. Imagine Atlas arriving at its optimal position, Mars poised on the brink of transformation, and humanity caught between curiosity, awe, and helplessness. This moment marks the climax of millennia-long preparation, a subtle, silent pivot where the future of both planets hangs in balance. Let's drift gently into the culmination of preparation and anticipation. Imagine Atlas arriving at its optimal position, Mars poised on the brink of transformation, and humanity caught between curiosity, awe, and helplessness. This moment marks the climax of millennia-long preparation, a subtle, silent pivot where the future of both planets hangs in balance. You feel the weight of convergence pressing softly against your imagination, like standing at the edge of a vast, frozen expanse, just as the first faint winds of change stir across its surface. The absurd intimacy delights you, suspended in awareness, tracing the threads of cosmic orchestration as they coalesce into a moment of quiet significance. You notice the textures of culmination, thin plumes of gas rising from polar ice, micro-warming spreading through surface layers, chemical reactions reaching subtle thresholds. Atlas hovers silently, precise in its position, every emission calculated to maximize efficacy. You might imagine running your fingers over frost that shifts imperceptibly beneath your touch, sensing the slow pulse of awakening, the quiet rhythm of preparation reaching its apex. The absurd intimacy comforts, planetary and human trajectories aligning with patient elegance, each micro-event contributing to the balance of outcomes. Currents drift soft, frost glimmers faint, gases rise, light refracts. You imagine the psychological tension, human observers witnessing the final stages of preparation, recording data, analyzing changes, and feeling awe and helplessness in equal measure. Every measurement, every interpretation, every emotional response resonates within the grand orchestration, a subtle yet profound contribution to comprehension and alignment. You sense the rhythm, anticipation, and observation interwoven, cognition and planetary transformation unfolding in tandem across light years and centuries. Particles drift soft, ice shifts faint, currents hum, light glints. You notice the elegance of balance, Mars teetering on the edge of transformation, Atlas poised with deliberate patience, and humans observing, learning, and internalizing lessons in perception, scale, and subtle influence. The culmination is quiet, without spectacle, yet profound in consequence. The absurd intimacy delights, awareness and action entwined, planetary awakening, coinciding with the maturation of human comprehension, both reaching a threshold simultaneously. Ice glimmers soft, plumes curl faint, light refracts, currents drift. You might picture the interplay of forces, chemical reactions accelerating imperceptibly, microcurrents responding to emissions, and surface layers warming gradually. Atlas monitors, adjusts, and maintains trajectory, ensuring that the final approach maximizes readiness for transformation. Humans measure, record, and analyze, their instruments serving as extensions of observation, each subtle act feeding, understanding, even as direct intervention remains minimal. You feel suspended in rhythm, cosmic orchestration converging with cognition, planetary readiness meeting attentive perception. Shadows fold slow, frost glints faint, gases rise, light bends. You notice the subtle feedback loops, human perception influencing experimental decisions, planetary responses refining observation, and Atlas's emissions guiding chemical activation. Each interaction is silent yet profound, a delicate exchange across scales of space, time, and cognition. You sense the absurd intimacy, being aware of these convergences, tracing invisible threads that connect action, observation, and planetary orchestration in a harmonious, millennia-long rhythm. Currents drift faint, particles shimmer soft, light glints, frost shifts. You imagine the awareness of opportunity and consequence, humanity's collective comprehension at the threshold, Mars awakening incrementally, and Atlas executing its mission with quiet precision. Every emotional response, analytical decision, and scientific measurement contributes subtly to the unfolding climax. You feel the poetry. The final approach is not explosive or violent, but patient, deliberate, and elegant, a crescendo composed in molecules, microcurrents, and observation. Particles drift soft, gases rise faint, ice glimmers, light refracts. You notice the culmination of millennia-long preparation, planetary readiness, human comprehension, and cosmic orchestration converging simultaneously. The moment is both delicate and immense, a quiet pivot upon which outcomes hang. You sense the absurd intimacy, standing at the threshold of transformation, witnessing alignment of chemical, thermal, and cognitive processes, marveling at the patient elegance of preparation and anticipation across eons. And so, you linger with the final approach, suspended in awe, observation, and quiet anticipation. Mars teeters on the brink, Atlas hovers precisely, and human consciousness engages with subtle, patient awareness. You exhale slowly, carried along by rhythm, perception, and the absurd intimacy of witnessing a climax orchestrated across millennia and light years, marveling at the delicate poetry of planetary transformation, human comprehension, and the subtle, silent pivot where the future of worlds hangs in balance.